Okay. 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 Echo. 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 Oh yeah, I was listening to something. What was it? Oh yeah, this.
Defend my stance.
No, I'm not mad
Defend
or
it,
hurt.
loser.
I'm frustrated because once these words are brought out, the argument ends. We can't have a back and forth anymore because now you're telling me what I think and you're not listening to what I'm saying because you've already decided, oh, he's lying about this. He's being bad faith.
This?
But the implication of that is that you never obfuscate, but maybe you do.
The problem is we're having an incredibly complicated conversation about incredibly broad political labels that I believe 90% of people could not accurately identify today. And you're saying, oh, you're not giving a rigid definition of this, you're obfuscating. I'm not obfuscating. I'm just acknowledging the hardcore political realities that we live in today.
That's not why I'm saying you're obfuscating.
Why are you saying I'm obfuscating? Okay, I'm sorry, hold on. I'm writing this down, word for word.
Okay.
Why am I obfuscating?
Write it the fuck down.
I think you are straw manning me with a completely untenable position by saying that if I say you have control over how your community defines this word, I must be saying you have 100% control over how your community uses the word.
Okay.
I also
so this is what it.
that,
Well, hold on. Okay. So
Just
you think I'm
this.
straw manning you with an untenable position by saying that if
Untenable.
you're claiming that I have control over how my community defines a word, you must be saying that I have 100% control over community defines a word. So in my mind, I feel like we're fighting about the interesting conversation, which is a struggle of how much effort should I put into this versus not.
Wait,
so
what?
I feel like I'm giving an example where I'm saying, well, there's a lot of external ways that these words are defined as well that are out of my control. And then your response is, no, you can control it in your community. When you say that as a response, so there's two responses. You can either say that, no, you can control it in your community. That makes it sound like a binary position. But if you were to respond to me instead and you were to say, well, yeah, there is a lot of external
fuck am I
content there that
doing
you
over
can't
here?
deal with. But like, I think it's worth it for you to fight
is
against that in your
boring.
community, even if it's not a 100% thing, to try to like maintain some like level
Oh my
of, and
God.
you're gonna have to fight for it all the time of this word's
do you
definition of community.
motherfuckers
Like a
come
response like that
from?
would be like, okay, well, let's talk about how much we should fight for the definition. But that's not what it felt like when I was
Fight 'em.
pushing back for these are why I don't fight 100% on these things. It sounds like you were always giving me a counter. It's like, oh, so you're saying this, or oh, well, you don't think that. Or, well, no, that made it felt like it was binary from you. That's the feeling.
okay.
Binary loser.
Yeah.
Because
I'm
we
not-
both
I'm
know
not
that I
saying-
would never say I have no control and I have total control. Both of those things are false. We both know that both of us, I would hope in
Yeah,
this
but
conversation, think both of those statements are false, right?
It feels like a derailment when you even introduce either of those concepts, because neither you're not going to say you have zero control, and I'm not going to say you have total control. So, and this is the same thing with whether Nick is a Nazi. It's the same. I feel like it's the same obfuscation. What I'm asking you is, what is your personal assessment? Is he a Nazi? Is he not a Nazi? Or do you not know? But when I press you on that at different times, I get different answers. That feels like the obfuscation. If you just said, I don't know, and I don't care, then no, I'm not going to say you're obfuscating then. I'm not trying to reach into your mind and say that like you're contradicting your inner thoughts. I'm saying the things you are saying are contradicting other things you're saying, and then you're positioning me as being unhappy that you don't know the answer to my question or that you won't take a firm stance. My problem is that you are taking multiple contradictory yet also kind of firm stances and introducing confusion. I think the confusion serves to give you a defense of how you're handling Fuentes, but it also serves as a defense of him. And I think that by saying that I'm unhappy that you don't have a firm, that you can't read his mind, like that's such a crazy straw man. No, I'm not saying you should read his mind or that reading minds is possible. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying based on all the information you have about him, I think it's kind of important for you to make an assessment of whether or not he's like a genocidal crazy person who wants to kill people if he comes to power, and
Genocidal
or to whatever
crazy
extent you think
person.
that is true. I do think you need to assess that.
Okay, here's what's happening. Okay,
Okay. All right.
Okay.
you're saying, is he a Nazi? And I'm saying, I'm not sure. And you're pointing out, well, you said he was a Nazi here. You said he was a Nazi here. Here you joke that he's a Nazi. Here you allude to him being a Nazi. Here you say he's not a Nazi, and right now you won't call him a Nazi. And you're
Fucking
saying
Nazi.
that I'm obfuscating by not answering the question. Is that a fair summary of what you're saying?
Yes, but I just want to again be clear that my problem is that all those statements contradict each other, not
Okay.
your current
I
answer or
understand.
your current thinking.
Sure. And my assertion is none of those statements are contradictory. But the problem is we're fighting over the statement, is he a Nazi? And you think that the question you're asking me is Nick Fuentes a Nazi? That's not the question that I'm dealing with. The question I'm dealing with is, what is a Nazi? That's the question. Insofar as Nazi is a strictly defined term, I can clearly compare it to Nick's stated positions and figure out whether or not he is or is not a Nazi. So for instance, if we go by the definition of he was part of the National Socialist Party, he's not a Nazi. If we go by the definition of has some vague anti-Semitic beliefs and is fascist, he might be a Nazi or is a Nazi. If we go by this or that,
Do you think his anti-Semitic beliefs are vague?
yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Because he doesn't currently advocate for genocide or ethno-states. He doesn't currently advocate for, well, it depends now on how we define anti-Semitic, I guess. Anti-Semitic Semitic in reference to Nazi, or anti-Semitic in terms of like, just doesn't like Jewish people.
Whatever you meant when you used the word.
Well, if you don't
By
know,
your
hold on.
definition.
If you don't know what I meant when I used the word, then for you to say, well, don't you think he is that, when you don't even know what I mean when I say that, I'm not saying disingenuous intention from your part, but you're asking me an empty question. You don't actually even know what I'm saying at that point.
One of us is being disingenuous when that exchange happens. I agree, and we both
No.
think it's the other.
I don't think we're both being disingenuous. I think that we both
think
have in
it's
our mind an
disingenuous.
understanding of what anti-Semitic means. That's the whole point of this
think you're-
conversation.
I think you're being disingenuous when you say he has vague anti-Semitic beliefs.
Do you
I
agree?
believe that you have I believe that you have a definition of anti-Semitic, and you have a definition of specific. And I believe that Fuentes' beliefs meet both of those criteria.
Specific.
Okay. Do you believe that different opinions of what could be anti-Semitism exist?
Absolutely.
Okay. So then if that's the case, when I ask,
Abso-fucking-lutely.
or when you ask, is Nick Fuentes anti-Semitic, we have to define that. If I just say yes or no, we could be both talking about different things, right?
We could, but I trust you to have a pretty reasonable definition of anti-Semitic. I think
No, not when we're literally debating the meanings of these words. These are the beetle in
we're
the
not.
boxes. Wait, like
This is-
you don't know what
I
anti-Semitic
don't
means when I
agree
say
that
it.
that's okay. I think that's an obfuscation to say that that's what we're doing.
Okay, here's a question. Is somebody that makes an anti-Semitic joke an anti-Semite?
No.
Okay, is somebody that thinks that Jewish people have a disproportionate outlay of control of media or entertainment in the United States anti-Semitic?
It depends how much time they spend thinking about that, but if just thinking that, no.
Okay. Is somebody that believes that Israel has an unfair treatment of Palestinians anti-Semitic?
No.
Is somebody that is anti-Zionist, so they don't support like the nation of Israel, or they believe that Israelis engage in apartheid against Palestinians, are they anti-Semitic?
No.
Is somebody that wants to curb the influence, the disproportionate influence that Jewish people have over media, are those people anti-Semitic?
Starting to get there, yeah.
Okay, starting to get there. So I think that the anti-Semitism that I've seen. One final question: is somebody that makes anti-Semitic jokes an anti-Semite?
Did they? I think it depends on the context or how
Sure.
often. At some point, if you keep making anti-Semitic jokes, at some point, I'm going to start thinking of you as hating Jews. Yeah.
Sure. So,
But I don't agree that this is the conversation. Like,
Well,
I,
hold on,
I
no,
feel
no,
like
this
this whole
isn't-
line.
this is the conversation. You don't want to have.
I don't
it.
agree.
I know.
We
you're wrong.
disagree about
But
what
you're
the
wrong.
conversation is.
This is
Okay,
the conversation.
okay.
This
Okay, I
because
just
you're
need to-
saying
I
you're
just
asking
need to
me.
make this
is
clear that
somebody,
I don't-
That's
I
fine
don't
that you
think
think
what
that.
you're doing-
You're asking me
Okay,
is somebody
okay.
X, and I'm telling you we need to define X, and now we're walking through now, and
don't-
you can see how complicated it is to define X.
I don't think I don't agree. I guess
You're
just,
wrong though. This isn't an
Okay,
agree or disagree.
So it's up to
You're
you.
wrong.
It's up to you. It's up to you. I can either make my case for why I don't think this is the right conversation, why I think it's obfuscating to frame it this way, or we can stay in your frame and I'll continue down your line of questioning. I'm happy to go either way, but I do need to interject and say that I don't think this is right.
I'm trying to point out to you the futility of the initial question, is he a Nazi? The first qualifier we're getting to Nazi is anti-Semitism, and you've already admitted that who is considered anti-Semitic can be up for discussion. There's a broad range of what is considered anti-Semitic. If there's a broad range of what is anti-Semitic, there's probably a broad range of what is a Nazi. So asking the question, is he a Nazi, is by definition, is definitionally an open-ended question. But when I point out that
I don't agree with that.
it logically follows. It's deductively true.
It's deductively true.
Agree with that. And I don't agree with your premise, and I don't agree with your framing. But if you want to keep asking about anti-Semitism, I will answer your questions, and I will be patient, and I will not interrupt. But I do want to interject that I think you're obfuscating by even framing it this way.
Okay, I think it's going to be impossible to move me off of this framing. But if you make a very compelling argument, I can be moved. So go for it.
When I talk about the definitions of these words, I'm talking about your definition.
You don't know what my definition is on any of these words.
That's right. Absolutely. I don't. But I know you decently well, and I trust you to formulate a definition of anti-Semitism that I would probably agree with, or that I think has utility. I also trust you to formulate a definition of Nazi, pedophile, murderer, rapist. All these words are words that you use a lot. You run into other people using them, and 99% of the time when I hear you argue about them, I agree with you. So even if it's not going to be my definition, I'm talking about your definition. So whatever your definition is, I'm fine with you using in this conversation. I don't even need to know what it is, and I'm not even going to ask you what it is.
Okay.
If I said, is Nick Fuentes a Nazi, and you said no, that would mean a lot to me. I'd probably ask you why you said that, but I wouldn't start picking apart your definition of Nazi. So the framing of, again, we have an equal sign. We got anti-Semite on one side, and we got Nick Fuentes on the other, and the question is the equal sign deserved?
Yeah.
I'm saying you, in your heart,
Heart
you
of
think
hearts.
Nick Fuentes is a Nazi, however you define Nick Fuentes, however you define him being that? Is it his secret beliefs? Is it what he does? Is it what he says? Is it his effect on the world? Whatever. Is it his fan base? Whatever the fuck you want it to be, you can do whatever you want with it. And you can define Nazi however you want. But I think, so what I'm saying you have a moral imperative to do is not to agree with me that Nick Fuentes is a Nazi. It's to formulate an opinion of Nick Fuentes, formulate an opinion of Nazi, and then make a decision about how you're going to use these words, or if you're not going to use these words. What's concerning to me is that you're using the word Nazi in a serious way, in a playful way. You're saying he is a Nazi, and you're saying he isn't a Nazi. And my problem with this is I believe Nick Fuentes' game plan is to make it confusing whether he's a Nazi or not. And I believe that you are introducing the same confusion unnecessarily
I understand.
by making it into a semantic argument.
Yes.
Okay.
Completely.
Everything that you've laid out in this argument, I believe, proves my paradigm and how I view the language being used.
Okay.
So, but you are, in my opinion, misrepresenting, not intentionally, but I think you're misrepresenting the strength of the words that you're using. So you say, for instance, is somebody a Nazi? The way that you define this Nazi word, or pedophile, or murderer, or rapist, is done in a tribalistic manner. You're not appealing to an objective definition of Nazi. You're telling me, I trust you, I know you, I think that we'll agree on the definitions roughly for these words. That's the problem, is that when different tribes of people are connecting on the internet, they've tribalistically determined what the definitions of some of these broader words are. If I talk to a lot of people on the right, things like groomer and pedophile are going to be broadly applied across the LGBT group because they also trust each other to have a tribalistic family way of defining these words. So when you ask me, I want you to formulate an opinion of Nick Fuentes, and I want you to formulate an opinion of all of these things to tell me like what you feel about these things. What I'm pushing back on is that that's fine, and if it's in a one-on-one conversation, maybe I'll say it, but in front of an audience, there's all sorts of different tribes butting up against each other with different definitions that are all different. So when you ask me, is somebody a Nazi, you're referring to 27 different things all at once. And I don't want to answer yes to that because I can't commit him to everybody's different definition of the word Nazi. We already had a conversation. We can't even agree on what anti-Semitism is. And you want me to agree on a definition of Nazi that I would hold somebody to publicly?
I don't want you to agree with other people. I want you to agree with yourself. Say your definition, and then that'll be it. And people will know what you meant when you said it, just like you gave the definition of the word pedophile.
That's not true.
You used the word pedophile just now.
If
You're
I
happy
was
to
to-
use the
if
word-
I was to-
wait. Let me finish. Now who's interrupting who? You used the word pedophile just now, and you said, "Here's my definition of
How many-
pedophile."
I can't
Other people
keep
have different
fighting this
definitions of
goddamn-
pedophile. This one is mine. And then you use the word. No ambiguity, no confusion. If there's 27 definitions, you just got rid of 26 of them, and then you're
Exorcist
fine using the word. When it comes to the word Nazi and Nick Fuentes, you don't want to do that. And that's all I'm asking you to do, is have your definition, tell us what it is, and then use it.
And then use
Okay.
it, motherfucker.
That is not true. Everything you just said is not true. You're worried that he is going to play in my definition if I'm not willing to like stake out a moral position on it. But what you just said, I just want you to say if he adheres to your definition of Nazi. Well, what if I define Nazi in a really strict sense and I say no? You're not going to be happy with that. You're going to have a problem with that, right?
I'm not going to have this problem with it. My problem is that you're obfuscating and creating confusion for Fuentes'
I understand.
benefit
You've said this 50
and for
million
your own
times.
benefit.
Let me
well, then don't
repeat
tell
what-
me I'm gonna. Don't then wait.
Okay.
Then when you say you're gonna have a problem with
I
it, like
understand
yeah,
what
I
you're
might not like it if you say the word Nazi is relegated to only describe people who are dead. We can never use it to describe somebody who's alive, because if they were alive, they'd be over 120 and they would be the oldest person on Earth or something. Like, yeah, if you're going to use the word Nazi that strictly, I'm going to have a problem with the utility of your definition. But that's a different problem than the problem I'm having. Your goal in the conversation is not to make me happy, and that's not what I'm asking you to do. That's an unfair framing. I'm asking you specifically to have a definition of Nazi, tell us what it is, and then have a definition of Fuentes, and tell us if you think he meets that definition. Or if you don't have a definition, just say you don't have a definition. Say, I don't know what a Nazi is and I don't want to use that word, and then stop using it.
Okay,
Or
let's say
I
that
have a definition, but I don't know what Nick Fuentes is. But my problem is you won't answer this clearly and consistently and concisely.
Okay, so you just want me to give you my definition of Nazi.
Yes.
And then say, okay. So I think that
Yeah.
my definition of Nazi generally employs, number one, a high level of conspiratorial anti-Semitism, not just actual observations about Jewish people.
Yeah.
So claiming that there are some type of like insidious plots can be a big part of that anti-Semitic thing, especially plots against your native race, right? So that's a big form of anti-Semitism. So number one, that's a pretty important qualifier. Number two is usually some sort of outward violence, or at the very least state-sponsored violence against ethnic minorities or other undesirables. So for instance, having like a state-sponsored plan to export or kill certain people of certain ethnic groups, or certain people of like LGBT persuasions or other types of quote-unquote undesirables, right?
Okay,
and then
can I ask a clarifying question?
go ahead.
Does wanting state-sponsored violence count, or you're saying you have to actually act in state-sponsored violence?
No, it'd be the desire for it would make you
Okay.
right. And then thirdly is generally Nazis want to build some form of fascist state. So meaning they don't care about fucking democracy. They don't give a fuck about fucking Congress or any shit like that. Like they want a single party, populist ruler, authoritarian, possibly totalitarian, vertical control of society. That's usually what I think of when I'm thinking of like neo-Nazi or Nazi. Those are the things that I'm thinking of. Insofar as that goes, Fuentes' outward positions are not there on, I don't think, on any of those three topics. Maybe a little bit on the third one, but on the first two, that is not his outward positions. So if you were to ask me, is America First a neo-Nazi movement or a Nazi movement? Probably not. I don't think so. Now, are there neo-Nazis in that movement? Almost certainly so. It's a large movement and it's very far right. And I think a lot of the rhetoric can be kind of amenable to those people. And if you ask me, is Nick Fuentes secretly a neo-Nazi? He could be. But that would be my stated positions on those three things. On Fuentes, on America First as a movement, the people in America First, and inside Nick's mind. So where would you go then from there?
I want to ask you just bullet point by bullet point.
Go.
You don't believe that Fuentes engages in conspiratorial anti-Semitism?
I haven't heard it as part of his stuff recently, but I could be shown clips that would convince me otherwise. Let me give a quick example of the two of these things. So if he says something like, I think that Jewish people all tend to vote or push politics in a certain way where they're kind of like, they want to always support Israel, and they're kind of like fucking always looking out for themselves and shit, and it fucks the rest of us over a little bit. I don't think that rises to the level of Jewish conspiracy. But if he says something akin to like what Lawrence Southern used to say with The Great Replacement, where he's like, I think there's a plan where these people are intentionally trying to eradicate white people, then that rises to a level of like Jewish conspiracy.
I'm just saying, based on what you know of him,
based on his recent rhetoric,
based on what you have already heard him say.
Yeah. Based of this, what I've heard recently, but this is something that I could be moved on. Somebody could send me a clip and go, he could say something like, "Oh yeah, Jewish people, I think they're actually really trying to fuck over white people." Like, oh yeah,
okay, so are you saying I don't know, or are you saying so? Like, if somebody asked you about me, they said, "Do you think that Max engages in anti-Semitic conspiratorial thinking?"
No, absolutely, I don't think so. I've never heard you even flirt with the ideas before.
Okay, so. At somewhere between me and Nick or Lauren, us flip switches or a switch flips, and then you say, okay, now I think you're maybe blah blah. So, are you saying you don't know? Are you saying probably not, yes or no?
He's never brought it up anywhere in a convo with me or alluded to it in a debate that I've seen him have, and I haven't been presented with content. So, but obviously his ideology lends itself towards those types of beliefs. So it's possible, but I wouldn't accuse him of having those beliefs because I haven't heard them. I haven't had them presented to me. I've had a lot of people email me about shit that he says and things. Yeah.
Are you not willing to give a one-word answer?
No, not on this. No. And I think asking for one is bad faith. I would make that accusation. Because clearly I don't care.
I think it would be bad faith for me to attack you for not giving one.
Okay.
But I want one, and if you don't want to give it, that's fine.
Okay, what is your one-word question?
Okay, let's hit here next.
I guess the choices I would give you are, the question is, does Nick Fuentes engage in anti-Semitic conspiracies? Or traffic in them?
Yeah, I'd say no, but it would be based on what I've seen so far. My mind could be changed to that. Somebody can send me a clip in it, but as of what I've seen so far, no.
Okay. And then what was the second criteria for being a Nazi? It wasn't fascism, or wasn't dictatorship. It was.
It's usually calling for like violent pogroms and shit like that, and like trying to put people in camps of like undesirables and ethnic people. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think that Nick Fuentes wants to do that?
I haven't seen it. I haven't heard or seen that, and it seems like he speaks to the contrary of that a lot.
Will you give a one-word answer?
The answer would be no. I don't think he engages in that. No.
Okay, so no conspiracy, no anti-Semitic conspiracy, no desire for violence against minorities.
Yes. No, as in yes, as in no. Yeah.
Right, got it. Okay. And then the third one is fascism.
Fascism, I'm not as sure, because he says weird shit about how he wants like a Christian monarchy. I don't know what the fuck he means by that, if he's actually sincere on that. I know that his group, he tries to get people to engage with the political system. So like he's went up and supported Laura Loomer and shit. He might be illiberal. He might be anti-democratic though. I don't know if he would like lean full into fascism. It seems like he could or would, but I don't hear him talk about forms of government much. It feels like he's mostly concerned with getting his people to engage in the current political system. But he could easily be a fascist, or that's what like his end goal would be. I'm just not sure. I don't talk to him about like what his ideal style of government is. And when it comes up, he says Christian monarchy. I don't know what the fuck that means.
Okay, so what's your one-word answer, if you want to give one?
I would say on that one, probably maybe or yes.
Okay. Will you pick one or no?
Is he a fascist?
Yeah.
I think he would be. I'll say yes on that one. I'll give you that one.
Okay, so he's a fascist,
Why
but you
would
don't
you
think
give
he
him that
meets the other
point?
two criteria.
Yeah.
Have
You're not
you?
gonna call him
I'm saying
Nazi.
yes to
Why
fascist
would
because he
you
feels
call
very
him a
anti-democratic
fascist?
to me. Yeah. So, okay, go ahead.
Okay. Have you read Rose Wrist's
He feels like
quote
a Nazi.
list?
Not yet. I never read quote lists from anybody for anything. But if somebody
You
wants
feel
to
like
give
a
me more
fascist, but
substantive
you
stuff,
can't
like I'll go
feel
through
like
it.
a
But
Nazi.
I'm not usually interested in like here's 50 quotes over the past 6 years.
Okay. A cross-examining question. If your answer to two of the criteria are no, why did you say he's basically a Nazi? I think the time before last we talked and on Twitter.
I already told you on Twitter for the purposes of fighting with Lance, because it's funny from the tweet. That if Lance believes that he's truly a Nazi, why is the one joke he would pick out the thing that didn't really have anything to do with Jews? That was stupid.
Juice.
And then I would have to know the context of the other conversation where he was like basically a Nazi.
Okay, so your general stance, it sounds like now is you're saying he
sakes,
just
now
doesn't
I
meet
gotta
the
go to
criteria for
town.
Nazi.
To truly be considered like a Nazi or Nazi?
Where
But
are you?
that-
It's considerable, not truly, but by
okay,
you.
I'll finish that shit
I don't think
anyways.
so. Correct.
Wait,
Okay.
what's this? Oh, I need to do this. I might as well go here.
Do you see
Do you see what I see?
my concern about the vagueness introduced by using that words in different contexts and different ways to describe him? If he, I mean, even if he's just a fascist, creating
He's
a
a
is he or
fascist.
isn't he narrative. Do you see how that? I mean, do you see how that helps Trump in a way, where then all the people?
No, I
who
totally.
fight
I
against-
see how you think it does, but I disagree with all of that. I think that all of these words are fucked, regardless of my input.
Regardless of your input, do you see how a is he or
Regardless.
isn't he a white supremacist narrative helped Trump?
Sure, I can, but I think people
Cold
calling him a white
generation,
supremacist helps Trump.
poison
I would
berry
accuse them more
generation,
than
cold
any of the
damage.
is he or isn't he people.
No. I'm not
Is
saying the
he
is he or isn't
or
he
isn't
people. I'm
he?
saying just the whole narrative around him being confusion around is he a white
What is
supremacist?
this,
I don't think
selling?
Trump is a white supremacist.
6,000.
But I think the idea,
6,000.
I think progressives clinging to the idea that he is
6,000.
actually helps him because it really sucks the air out of any criticism of him.
What does? Say that again?
6,000.
Progressives clinging to the idea that Trump is a white supremacist helps him because
That's
there just isn't a lot of
17
evidence that he is, and he
here.
doesn't seem like one.
Okay.
Do you see how that confusion around that helps him?
Yes.
Okay. Do you see,
sell.
from my perspective, that if Fuentes, even if he's just a
No, I don't
fascist,
see.
any confusion around whether he is a Nazi, and specifically joking or ironic confusion, do you see
I
how
need
that
shit
helps him
anyways.
discredit his critics?
Equip
Yeah, it
this,
could. Yeah.
Sell that.
So, so I feel like if you're saying he's
this
basically a Nazi, if you're jokingly calling him a Nazi, but then if you're saying you don't think he meets
Where's the seller? Oh, right here.
criteria for Nazi, but he meets
Sell that.
He's,
worst
he's close
prejudice.
enough for me to joke about it. Like, I might joke about Hassan being a tanky, but Hassan is absolutely not a tanky in any, like, strict definition of the word.
Tanky.
Neither is Vosh, but I might joke about it sometimes.
Yeah, so I'm concerned about you joking about it with him because you're
Okay,
saying
where
he
was it
meets
going?
the worst
Over
criteria. The worst
here.
part about
Aspect
Nazis is that they're
piercing
fascists.
cold.
I disagree.
So like if somebody wants,
Alright, let's
well,
go
I
to
absolutely,
that.
I mean, if somebody wants to kill you,
How many of those?
but they're gonna vote on it, then like
400.
that's not that big of a problem. Somebody
Let's go,
engages in
spend some of
conspiracy.
those.
Wait, hold on. What do you mean that's
thinking.
not that big a problem? We were a democracy with slavery for like 100 years. Over 100 years. How do you mean that's not that big of a problem? The Democratic Party of the United States didn't keep it from doing atrocities.
Yeah, it's a big problem, but I don't think it's as big of a problem. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
Okay. I think that engaging in anti-Semitic conspiratorial thinking.
Let's see. Boots, pants,
well,
ambulance
okay,
ring, whispering key.
I'm saying if somebody
What I'm saying is that, like,
somebody-
there could be like
somebody
good.
somebody just wanting to kill you or wanting the government to kill you. Yes, it's a problem if enough people are unified in their beliefs about that, and then they start voting on it, like something like slavery happens. Yeah, that's bad. But
30,000.
most people in the
you sell
United
these
States
here?
have other people they want the government to
Cancel them
kill.
back, huh?
I think
Guess
we're just
gotta
kind
go
of a
to the shop.
bloodthirsty nation, and democracy prevents us from doing terrible, terrible things to each other. So that's what I mean when I say that. I'm not trying to downplay the incidence of racial violence in democratic nations.
wonder
I'm
if he
saying that
thinks,
right now, when I think of
humans are
what's
good.
stopping genocide from happening now, democracy is like the first thing that comes to mind. So I'm not. If I hear somebody has conspiratorial thoughts about Jews or any other
Fire
race, like yeah, that's
damage.
concerning or upsetting. But like a lot of fucking people do.
Poor
It's just,
skill
I just don't care that much about that part. I care about it only because of what that person would do if they came to power. The only
Unstable
reason I care about
parts.
that is if that person wants to take over the government, which I already know
He wants
Fuentes
to kill me
does because
and
he
all my
fucking tried to do
friends.
it. He literally tried to overthrow the government, and you're here saying like he might be.
Stop making the emotional appeals.
You're,
Wait, stop making the emotional appeals. Super cringe. Don't fucking do that to me. That's because
Fuck
I'm
no,
gonna start
friend.
crying.
the
and
age
do
of the
it.
Giga Chad is over, bitch. I will make emotional appeals. This is an emotional topic for me. I care about my country and I love my country. When somebody tries to overthrow the government, I get upset about it.
Cringe.
You know, and I wasn't making an emotional appeal. I was making a logical appeal. He literally tried to overthrow the government, which you agreed with the last time we talked. And you're saying he's a fascist in a way where you're like, I'll bite the bullet and say he's probably a fascist.
Okay, and I would say that one of the huge contributing factors for how we ever got to that point was people's inability to engage with the other side, and one of those inabilities is the obsession with using words like Nazi, fascist, racist.
It's my fault that Nick Fuentes tried to overthrow the government.
Absolutely,
Partially, yes.
all your fault.
Okay.
And that's the thing that I'm trying to get away from, because I can do every single part of my job. I'm going to keep talking because you just talked for 20 fucking minutes, okay? I can do every single part of my job that I need to do as effectively as possible without ever calling somebody a Nazi or a racist or whatever the fuck. I don't need to use any of those words to attack all the ideas, to give people an accurate assessment of what other people believe, and to discourage people from following certain bad ideologies. And I would say that by using any of those words, I'm putting myself at a disadvantage, because just like in a movie, when you use a real life song inside the movie, there might be thoughts or feelings that a listener or viewer has that I have completely lost control over by bringing in that word. So I avoid doing that completely. I only attack the ideas. I only go after people on the merit of things. I avoid all of the extra baggage, all the extra bullshit. I don't lose anybody because I'm just throwing around words that may or may not be accurate depending on how they define them. And I can do all of that perfectly. When people like you come in and try to say, you need to call somebody a Nazi, you need to call somebody a fascist, you are contributing to the further divide of these people going, no, he's calling you that, I'm not that, I'm leaving. So you and your types of people that are insistent on using these words as weapons are the ones that are making all of the discourse worse, and you're making it harder for me to do what I do. You're not contributing anything positive to the discourse by insisting that I call somebody a Nazi. If they're a Nazi and he has Nazi beliefs, then I will call out the Nazi beliefs like I have on panels, and people will have those Nazi beliefs, and then we'll move on from there. That's how I prefer to operate, and that's how I've been operating, and it's been working pretty well so far.
Did I insist that you call him a Nazi?
It seems like you insist that I have some solid, rigid definition for it that I maintain through every single context, and I strictly adhere to it in every context.
Is that the same as insisting that you call him a Nazi?
Well, I don't know. I said that I wouldn't call him a Nazi, and it seemed like that upset you, and now you're trying to give me all the reasons why I should call him a Nazi.
No, I never said you should call him a Nazi.
Then what's the problem if I don't want to call him a Nazi? Then what are we even fighting about?
Well, right now we're fighting because you just said I'm insisting that you call him a Nazi, and I want you to
I'm not asking about this particular statement. Let's back up on the macro level. What are we arguing about then? If you're okay with me not calling him a Nazi, what is this conversation about?
I want you to admit that I've never told you that I insist you call him a Nazi. I've never actually said that, right?
You might not have said that, but what you said is that by me not calling him a Nazi, I'm providing cover for him to become potentially the new neo-Nazi dictator in the United States, which I assume is bad.
I haven't said that either.
Hold on.
I will say, I think you have my thesis written down, right? By being inconsistent.
Hold on, wait. I'm pulling my audio. I'm curious on this one. Did Mr. Girl say that
Wait, you can't pull your audience. You just told them something.
You tell them
something.
Okay, you said it, so they'll remember. Did Mr. Girl say that my refusal to use the word Nazi provides cover
control what the audience
for Nick
thinks, Steven,
and allows him to become a fascist dictator?
You wrote down my thesis. Just fucking read it.
Which one? Where?
I don't know. I can't see your screen, but I assume...
For the conversation today, it's whether or not my community has 100% control over a word or whatever.
That's something you said I said that I didn't say, and then I accused you of gaslighting when you did that. So no, I didn't say that either.
Wait,
I've never said you have 100%... Wait, let me be clear. I have at no point ever said you should call him a Nazi if you don't think he's a Nazi. I'm saying I want you to formulate an opinion of Fuentes and formulate a definition of the word Nazi, and then I want you to decide, which you've agreed to do, and you already just did, so I don't know why you're still saying that I'm insisting you call him a Nazi. I want you to decide whether you think he's a Nazi or not, and then I want you to give an answer to that question, which you did. I've never told you should call him a Nazi. You shouldn't call somebody a Nazi if you don't think they're a Nazi.
So now that we've answered that question, what is the rest of our conversation about?
Well, now the conversation's about how you just fucking said.
Damn, man.
No, you're dude. Oh my God. Let's eject this part of the conversation. Eject it. Okay. I was wrong on everything. What are we talking about now? Now that I've said I wouldn't define him as a Nazi. Are you actually
conceding that you were wrong about that?
Yes, I was wrong about everything I just said. So what I'm asking you now is, what is the conversation? That doesn't feel like a
real concession. It feels like you're saying it doesn't matter.
Okay.
You get to say that I said something I didn't say. Okay. Then poll your audience to see if they think I said it, because you just said that I was wrong
about whatever you just said. Whatever I said, whatever you said I was wrong about, I'm wrong about. 100%. Okay? So now my question is, now that I've given you my definition of Nazi, and I said I don't think America...
I want to respond to something else you said.
What are we talking about? What do we disagree on now?
I don't know. I'm responding to shit you're saying. If you want to steer the conversation in a different direction after that, that's fine. But I do want to respond to the idea that you're lumping me in with, you said, types of people like you. Your kind of people who insist on calling people Nazis. I don't think that's fair. I don't know of any other person that I've ever seen publicly say, I don't think you need to call this person a Nazi. I don't think you need to say that they're not a Nazi. My concern is that you don't have a clear definition of Nazi, and you don't seem to have a clear stance on this person, and I just want you to clarify for your audience what that is, because I think by being vague and dodgy about it, you are creating confusion, which serves that person's destructive
I understand.
goals.
So I've given you a clear definition, and I've given you a clear stance. So are we completely resolved now on the conversation, or is there any other
No, I got another issue. But
Okay.
do you agree that my position that I'm presenting to you is actually kind of unique and not a standard progressive position or whoever the fuck you're accusing me of being like?
Sure, it can be unique, but the prescriptions that you make at the end of the day end up being almost identical to the ones a lot of progressives have made. But maybe not. Maybe it'll change. Where do we go now from this position? I've given you a clear definition, and I've given you a clear stance.
Again, I've never heard a progressive make the prescription. Come up with your own definition of Nazi. Inform your audience of what that is.
Yep.
Then come up with your own sense of this person. I've never heard a progressive say that. Have you?
Okay.
Have you?
I just
That's
said.
my prescription. That is the prescription.
Okay.
Have you heard?
Oh,
a
if that's the
progressive say
prescription, then we're in agreement. Then we're all good on this. I've given you a clear definition. I've given you a clear stance. You have no other issues.
My other issue is the question I was asking you, which I think you evaded by saying that slavery was democratically voted for, which is true and a good point you brought up. However, the question was, do you see why I'm concerned about the is he or isn't he a Nazi narrative, which has been going on in your community for a while about Lauren, like jokes about how she's our Nazi queen, and then people kind of get freaked out and saying like, wait a second, but she's actually Nazi, and then people making videos about it, and people saying like, no, she's not that bad, or she's reformed, and then she says something, and everybody's like, oh, Jesus Christ. She talks to Pisco, and then she's like, oh, it's like, oh, she hasn't changed at all. Oh my God, like that whole thing clearly sanitizes her, and I think that it sanitizes Fuentes.
How did any of every conversation that we've had, the conversation with Pisco, she got destroyed.
Yeah.
Without ever having to call anybody a Nazi. When I went in, so Gideon and Abba said that neither of them would...
I'm talking about before that.
I don't think my refusal to call somebody a Nazi, and you're telling me I shouldn't say it if I don't believe they are, I don't think that's giving them cover. Just find the bad... Why is it so hard to find the bad position and attack the bad positions?
I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. I'm saying that the confusion about is she a Nazi, or is it funny that she's a Nazi because she's not really a Nazi, but she just seems like one, or is she kind of a Nazi? The confusion around that becomes a meme, becomes funny. Wait, let me finish. It becomes funny in itself, and the same thing happened with Trump.
I don't
It's
care.
funny.
I don't care.
But that's fine if you don't care about what I'm saying. Then let me finish.
No,
and you can
I
say you
don't care about
care.
like the confusion on if somebody is or isn't a Nazi.
Okay, that's why we're having this conversation.
I've already
Because
given you
I
my
do care.
definition. Why do you
That's
care? I've given you
fine.
my definition.
The question is.
Okay,
do
so
you
hold on.
see-
Then you were wrong before when you said you just wanted me to give a clear definition and a clear stance, because now you're bothered. You are going back to the business. You're bothered by people being confused if they are or aren't a Nazi. I've given you a clear
I want you to let me ask this question. I've been trying to ask this question for 5 minutes.
If it's taking you 5 minutes to ask a question, that's your problem. Okay, but go ahead.
I don't think it is.
It
I think
absolutely
it's actually
is.
because you keep derailing it.
It's absolutely not.
This
but go
question's
ahead.
going to take me less than 30 seconds to ask.
Okay.
But every time you say anything, that timer doubles. Okay. I don't remember what the question. Oh yeah. Do you see how it creates
Fucking
confusion when you use the word Nazi jokingly, use it seriously, say he's basically a Nazi, say he's not a Nazi, when you use this like wide variety of definitions and uses and in different contexts, do you see how all that adds up to the same kind of is he or isn't he a Nazi narrative that I think has helped Trump and has helped Lauren Southern?
No.
Two fucking vampires.
I think that the only
go,
confusion it
vampire.
creates is around
Yeah.
those words themselves. And I think the obsession with those words has created confusion where it really matters, which is confusion around their positions. And I think on that subject, my community has more clarity on the actual positions of any of these far-right people I've ever talked to than any other progressive or left-leaning community. And I think that other communities' obsessions with using these words is what leads them to have more confusion about the actual stated positions. And I think that the clarity that you're looking for, the clarity that you're looking for, the clarity that you are looking for is clarity that does not matter. So for instance, it might be the case that if I go into other communities, there is a huge amount of clarity. If I go into Hassan or Vosh's community, there is a ton of clarity on whether or not Lauren Southern or Nick Fuentes is a Nazi. 100% clarity. And in my community, there is far less clarity on if they are or if they are not a Nazi. Now, you might look at that and you might go, wow, that's really good. There's a lot of clarity in Vosh's community and in Hassan's community, and there's none in your community. And you might say, look at that lack of clarity. Look at that confusion. But what I would say is you're looking for clarity in the wrong place. You're looking for clarity on whether or not people have unified around a tribally defined word. And in that sense, other communities do have more clarity than me. But when it comes to stated positions, there is total obfuscation in both Vosh's subreddit and Hassan's subreddit. They do not know a single fucking policy position of almost any of the people that they criticize. But if you go into my subreddit, they're arguing, is he a Nazi or is he not? Well, he said this, and this, and then he said this, and this. They're actually engaging with the content. They're arguing back and forth on facts of the matter. If I go into Vosh's community, there is 100% clarity on whether or not Nick Fuentes is a Nazi. There's about 90% clarity on whether or not I'm far right. But there's 0% clarity on any of our policy positions. So when you ask me, do you see how you're obfuscating? I could guess, sure, maybe I'm obfuscating around the term Nazi or the term fascist, but that's not where I want clarity on, because I don't give a fuck about the tribally defined words. I just want my community to understand what the people think. And in that sense, my community has more clarity than any other left-leaning community on the internet. That's what I would say.
Okay. I agree with what you're saying, but I don't agree the frame that you're introducing by saying it. You're saying that I want you to use the word and that you don't use it, but you do use the word. My problem is the way you use the word. So I'm not saying, like, yeah, you do a good job of elucidating other people's positions. That's true, and you do a good job of making sure that that's important and that that comes to to the forefront of the conversation and that your community understands it. I think that's good. I have no problem with you doing that, and I agree with your criticisms of most left-leaning communities or most communities in general. That's all good and fine. But the question I'm asking you is, and you said no, is do you see why I'm concerned about your use of the word Nazi? Not that you're using it incorrectly, or not that I want you to use it, it's that you are using it. You're using it seriously to refer to Nick Fuentes sometimes. You're using it ironically sometimes, and then other times you're saying, like today, if we get down to brass tacks, like, no, I don't think he's a Nazi. Yeah,
I can see your problem, but the difference is I don't care about that sort of confusion. It's all like meta-ironic humor.
That's the whole thing. That's the whole argument we're having is you don't care about that, and I'm saying
I thought the argument was whether or not I had a clear definition and a clear stance about what a Nazi is. Now you want to change the argument to, am I contributing to the muddying of the definition of these words? If you want to have that argument, then I'll say, oh, yeah, I guess I probably am when I use them jokingly.
No,
I just don't care.
No, I don't care about the word.
Okay, then let's back up. Tell me what we're talking about right now. I don't know what our disagreement is. What are we talking about right now?
I've accused you of helping Nick Fuentes rise in power by giving him cover, by refusing to have a serious and consistent opinion about whether he's a Nazi.
Okay, and I disagree with the premise. Because I think that him rising to power isn't by people knowing if he is or isn't a Nazi. I think one of the reasons why people like this are able to get up to power.
Wait, I know that's not the premise.
That was your question. You said, I've accused you of helping Fuentes rise to power by giving him cover by not having a serious and consistent opinion of him being a Nazi. Is that what you said, or am I wrong?
Well, let's run through the different possibilities here. What if you thought Nick Fuentes was a Nazi and you said it?
Then you probably would think I'm doing a good job.
Good job.
By having chicken and waffles with him? Giving him a streaming career potential?
No, you might have other problems past that, but you would prefer me to have called him a Nazi and to be serious about calling him a Nazi than not. You would be happy with that thing. There might be other problems past that.
Well, yeah. Do you see that it would create pretty big problems for you and your career if you said, yes, this person's a Nazi. He wants to become the dictator of the country, and he wants to kill the Jews, and he wants to do all this other horrible shit. And then you're like buddy with him. Like, you
Buddy
see
buddy?
that would be a problem. I'm not saying that you're
No.
not saying this because
People have
it's
said this about me forever. I don't care. Of course, this is. Hold on. So you think
Hold
that
the fuck
I'm
on.
trying to sanitize Fuentes because I don't want to hurt my own image?
No, I'm saying, do you see that
Hilarious.
if you took that stance, that would cause problems for you? Whether you want to cause those problems for
No,
yourself or not.
I don't. I don't agree with that whatsoever. Absolutely.
You don't think
not.
it would create problems for
Absolutely
you to
not.
say,
No.
to help the career of a
Abso-fucking-lutely
literal
not.
Nazi who wants to gas the Jews?
No. I don't think me calling him a Nazi or not is going to influence at all how the public perceives that. There's not a single
I'm not
person
saying
that's like,
it would. I'm saying
Not
that's
a
not what I'm saying.
single
I'm saying, do
person.
you think it would create career problems for you if you said that Nick Fuentes is a Nazi
Nick
and still was buddy with him?
Fuentes.
not any more than it is now with me saying he's not a Nazi and being buddy with him.
Really? You don't think your community
Buddy,
would be like,
buddy.
well, if you
But-
actually think he
buddy.
literally wants to gas the Jews,
He
then,
literally.
like, why
Hold
are
on,
you-
no, that was a horrible. Trying to say those two things were the same. Him being a Nazi and him wanting to gas the Jews are two different things. Those are two different statements.
Jesus.
If Fuentes was on his stream talking about like, I want to gas the Jews, when we get into power, we need to kill these blacks and blah 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 blah. Those would be
Jesus.
pretty extreme policy positions that I would have a much rougher
I
time.
thought that was your definition of Nazi. What am I?
Yeah, but I am not call. Okay, dude, bro, hold on. You just smuggled so much into that sentence. Holy fuck. So you're saying if I called him a Nazi, insofar as what my definition of Nazi is, implies that he's a totally different person than what he actually is.
No,
If I thought he was an
I'm saying-
actual
I'm saying-
card-carrying
no, in
neo-Nazi,
hypothetical-
hold on, no.
yes, in the-
If I thought he was an actual
If you
card,
actually thought he was a Nazi and you said he was,
then me hanging out with him, yeah, would be significantly different. A chicken and
Yes,
waffles
okay.
thing probably wouldn't happen. Yeah.
Chicken
okay,
and
great.
waffles?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So I'm saying that by your admission now, it would make a pretty big difference if your opinion was that he is a Nazi.
No,
it changes.
no.
It changes.
Not if my opinion was that he was a Nazi, that if he was actually a Nazi. You're implying a whole different set of stated
doesn't-
beliefs.
No, it doesn't matter. If you say, guys, I think Nick Fuentes wants to gas the Jews, and I'm still going to go out for chicken and waffles with him, that will create career problems for you, whether it's true or not.
Okay, yeah, it probably would. Sure.
Because you're saying, I will have chicken and waffles with somebody who wants to gas the Jews. I will laugh with him while he asks the guy on the street if he's Jewish, knowing full well that if he ever gets into power, he's going to kill that guy and his family.
Sure. Yeah,
That would
I would
create
admit
career
that would
problems
create
for you.
career,
Gonna kill
career
that
problems. Yeah,
fucking guy.
probably.
His family.
Okay.
His whole
so
fucking
I'm trying to walk
family.
you through how this actually does matter.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so if in your
Come on,
definition of
retard.
Nazi, if he is a Nazi, then you can't really hang out with him like that.
Oh, I don't like the framing. I can, but yeah, it would be bad for my career. I can
Okay,
do
you
whatever the
shouldn't.
fuck I want. I shouldn't.
You
Okay,
can. You
true.
can do whatever. Yes. You
Yes.
can.
Okay.
Okay. If he's not a Nazi, and you definitively say that he's not a Nazi, and then it comes out later that he is, that's bad for you also.
No, I have no problem with that. There could be things that I've missed. I'm not fully committed on 100% one way or another that like I've heard all of his content. There's a lot of content I haven't seen. Like my opinion is informed of him, of the conversations I have with him, the clips of him that I end up seeing, and then the emails that I get about him. But it's possible that somebody could show me clips. Maybe Rosewrist will say like, hey, Steven, like you need to check this. And there's like a 20-minute rant of him being like, listen, dude,
Yeah.
we got to do something with blacks, LGBTs, Jewish people, whatever. And I'd say that and I'd be like, oof, that's pretty shitty. Like if I would have
Yeah,
known
but
that,
after
I don't
all
know.
this-
I don't know if we would have had like fucking lunch together.
Okay,
that's like
that's
way
gonna
more
make
extreme shit. Yeah.
That's gonna make you look dumb to a lot.
I don't give a.
people
I,
if that
Dumb.
happens.
Okay, sure.
Really fucking dumb.
You can say you don't care, but that's true. Like,
Sure,
will
yeah, it
make you
could,
look
yeah,
dumb.
sure, it
Okay,
could, yeah, of
okay,
course, yeah.
Okay. What will
Okay,
make you
okay,
look the
okay.
least dumb
I got.
is if you didn't have an answer. It's obviously the safest position
What
is to
is
say,
this
well, I've
guy?
kind of called him a
Is this
Nazi. I've kind
a
of called him not a
event?
Nazi, and I've said I don't know. Like that's clearly the safest
Yeah,
position.
it's also the most intellectually honest answer too, but that's just a coincidence. But go ahead.
Just a coincidence.
It's also the best position for Fuentes, is for people to not know, for it to be a joke, for people to join his audience and become radicalized that way. Like, oh, I thought we were just joking, but no, the stuff he's saying makes a lot of sense. That's totally possible, totally plausible. And he said that himself. He said that I'm going to hide my anti-Semitism in jokes so that I have plausible deniability. Okay, so
Nerd.
I guess I'm comparing it to Trump again because I think it has this effect of making it really fun to be his fan, because you get to trigger the libs
Trigger
They hate you.
lives,
It's fun when they hate you,
what?
and they hate you like you're a Nazi, but you're not a
Hate
Nazi. You're just a Trump
me.
supporter.
I
You're
need
not.
you
You're
to
not
hate
actually a
me.
white supremacist. You just hate these fucking people who don't
I
understand.
hate these fucking people.
And it also provides cover because then Trump can kind of dog whistle, and he does it on purpose. He gets the dog whistle.
I don't provide cover to
Fucking dog
Fuentes.
whistlers.
Being obsessed over whether or not I call him a Nazi or not, I don't provide cover to Fuentes.
I don't
You
think
do
I'm
when you
obsessed.
insist on these words like this, but I don't.
Damn,
cover.
are you gonna fucking die?
Okay, so you don't think that progressives calling Trump a white supremacist provides cover for him because it creates
He's a white
confusion?
supremacist.
Because there isn't really a
The
basis
cover
for it.
there isn't that they're calling him a white supremacist. That's part of it. But the greater cover is that they don't actually address his policy positions.
Agreed.
Like if you were to
Agreed.
talk to most people and say Trump,
Yeah,
like if you were to tell most,
you're
here's the
good
thing.
at that.
If
I
you tell
know,
most
I
progressive, if you
admitted
tell
this
most
already.
progressive, sure. I want this to be stated for the record, for the stenographer in the corner taking
For the
notes. Okay. If you were to tell
stenographer.
most progressives, Trump was actually kind of moderate as far as Republicans go. Most of them would say absolutely not. But if you poll progressives, they'd probably say less than 5% would believe that. In terms of his policy positions and like everything that he advocated for
fuck?
legislatively, Trump was actually fairly moderate as far as Republicans go. They'd lose their fucking mind. But that's true in terms of policy positions. They say, well, no, he's a white supremacist, racist, blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay. A lot of Republicans are.
Yeah.
But not race supremacists. But yeah, so I think that the cover is being provided by people that are calling them the word. Yeah. But I don't think that it's
Yes,
just because
yes, but
just
wait.
because they're calling them because they're not attacking the policy positions.
Okay.
Yeah, go, okay.
Okay, so let me bring it home
Mm-hmm.
by saying you are playing that role by calling him the word when you don't mean it.
Okay.
You are making it into a fun, and it's funny.
Fun?
Your audience definitely thinks it's
Funny?
funny when you call him a Nazi to his face, jokingly, and he thinks it's funny. But the problem is that ambiguity is his only path to growing an audience.
But I think that the
of Nazis.
ambiguity is not
Fucking guy.
caused by people just
Jesus
calling him the word. It's
Christ.
the lack of willingness to attack him on his
I'm
So
not saying
many.
that it is caused by that. That's a strong.
Okay,
man.
well
It's
then
not
in that
caused
case,
by that.
I
I'm
don't
saying-
provide
I'm
that
saying
cover
you
because
could-
I'll attack them on the
fuck
policy
out of there.
positions.
I think that I don't think it's caused by that, but I think by disambiguating your use
Jesus
of the word Nazi,
Christ.
it would actually have a meaningful impact.
Sure, and I 100% disagree because every other left-leaning
Get
community
suck
will
'em in.
use that word in unison far more than mine, and every single left-leaning community has far less of an understanding of any of the policy positions of any of the far-right people I
But
talk to.
don't you think that their use of that word is flailing and inconsistent?
The other communities?
Does it, yeah,
Yeah, I do.
It makes
But
no
the thing
sense
I'm
to-
more
to-
upset
if you're gonna
about
say-
is-
if you're going to say Hitler's a
Legendary.
Nazi and then you're going to say Trump is a Nazi and then you're going to say
But my issue is less. My issue is less
All
of their
right,
use
what
of
is
the word.
this
It's that
Pratt
they
is
won't
a
even.
Nazi.
They
When
won't
you
even go
cast
after the policy.
Blizzard,
They don't
it
even
will
know the policy
periodically
positions.
that's fine. I know you. Yeah, I agree. This is a good thing about you. I like your content. I think you're good at that. I agree.
Okay.
I agree with you. You're good at getting the policy
Fine.
positions and talking about them. It's very important, and I agree with you. But it's not
That's
what we're
very
talking about.
important.
I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about how your criticisms of how the left uses the word Nazi inconsistently is what I'm saying about you. I'm saying if you're using that word, you're calling somebody a Nazi who you don't really think is a Nazi, or who you think is sort of a Nazi, and somebody who you just said you think is a fascist. Like, fascists kill people.
Yes, and my
And if
argument,
he's going to kill people,
I don't
really
care about the emotional
I
argument. I'm
don't-
talking over you now. If you're talking about the emotional argument, okay. So my
Wait,
my contention.
wait, the new rule is you interrupt me if I get emotional?
Yeah, if you're like he kills people, yeah, I understand. I don't care. That is the new rule. Okay. So what I'm
Wait, no, that's
saying.
bullshit. No. The idea that, no, fuck you. The idea that it's upsetting
No,
that
fuck you.
fascists want to kill people, if I sound emotional when I talk about that, you get to interrupt me?
Democratically elected people kill people too. Okay. Your statement carries no weight.
So you don't think that the murder and false imprisonment of your own civilians is a particular of innocent people is a particular problem with fascism? That's just anybody.
Have you ever heard of the Patriot Act? Have you ever heard of Obama targeting U.S. citizens on foreign soil with drones? Like, this isn't exclusive to fascist regimes.
Are we comparing Obama to fucking Hitler?
No, but look at the dumb fucking game that we're lost in now because you're so obsessed with the word fascist. Attack the ideas. It's always bad to kill your own citizens, generally speaking, unless it's like the death penalty, right?
Okay, the problem
Yeah,
I have with fascism is that when you have a fascist dictator, you are not in a free state, and the dictator tends to kill millions of people just because they feel like it.
Sure,
don't see
but
that
there's a
happening in
reason
most
why we talk.
democracies.
There's a reason why we talk about Hitler more than like Mussolini. Okay, so, and there's a reason why
Those are
even in
some
democratic
bad
societies like the United
dudes.
States, we can talk about things like our internment camps or our treatment of Native Americans. We don't have to just talk about fascism and blah blah blah. Like, let's just talk about the things
Fascism.
themselves. Because you're providing the cover now. You're providing the cover by focusing on
Fascism.
Fascism is a specific structure of government
Man,
that I
this
have
is
a huge problem with.
fucking,
Then say that. Don't say fascists kill people. Lots of people kill people. Killing people is probably bad if it's murder.
Only
This
if it's murder.
is why I switched to Shopify. I tried 3 other platforms prior to Shopify, and I remember my breaking point was when I would try to make one little change and my entire site would go down. What are you waiting for?
This one,
Start your free
on
trial
Inferno
with
is active. Your
Shopify today.
pyromancy skills cost no mana.
Okay. Do you?
When I use words like
Don't
Nazi,
you
I
think
use
that
them
fact-
jokingly. I'm not using them as a
I
serious
know,
criticism of
that's why
somebody.
we're- I know,
no,
that's
but
why
in
we're
my
doing it. I
community,
don't want
we
you
don't
to do
care. We don't argue. When we say somebody is bad, it's not because they're a Nazi or a fascist. It's because they think that interbreeding between black and white people is degenerate. Or it's because they think that we shouldn't have an age where we said we should fuck 2-year-olds like Amosi. Or it's because they think that we should that we should like sail into the fucking Mediterranean and try to turn around boats that are saving immigrants drowning in the fucking like sea, right? These are why we think people are bad, not because they're Nazi or fascist. So insofar as that's concerned, I'll play with the word Nazi or fascist. In fact, when I see my community argue about it, I find those are good arguments. When they say something like
You just unironically said Nick Fuentes is a fascist. You weren't playing when you said that.
I don't
You
care
used
though,
the
but that's
word.
not my problem with him. I can have
I'm not
conversations.
saying it. I'm
Oh my
not saying
God.
it is. I never said that's
Okay,
your
so I don't
problem
care
with
about
him.
calling him I'm not when I'm arguing with him. I'm not going to say like Nick Fuentes, you're a fascist, and that's so
Nick
bad. I'll just attack.
Fuentes.
I'm not
Oh,
saying you
you're
should. I'm not
fascist.
saying you should say
Okay,
that.
then I'll joke
I
about
like
it
that
too.
you
I'll
talk
joke about Nazi and I'll joke about fascist because I don't care about
know.
I don't care about these
I know.
words.
That's the thing I'm giving you pushback.
Sure, and I don't care. And I'm telling you that my community
Okay,
has
so if
more
you don't
clarity.
care about my pushback, that's fine.
It's not that I don't care about your pushback. It's that I don't care how those words are used. You can give me pushback about it, but you haven't convinced me that there's an essential reason
How
why
can
I
I
should
convince
guard.
you? You're not listening to me.
I am. You just haven't given a
You're
single
really
compelling
Mr.
argument.
Grilling me right now. You're not listening to anything I'm saying.
Max, the people on your side have killed people, okay?
Interesting.
We suffered almost $2 billion in property damage from people wielding words like yours.
What is this?
These guys are like seasoned debaters. She's like setting him up for traps. He's like caveating as she's doing it. She's about to make this girl second guess her abortion. Jesus.
Because I don't see a difference.
Then why are you bringing it up?
I would also say that abortion is from the moment they are inside of you, my baby.
Who are these these people? Bro, what the no offense, but like when I meet like random kids on college campuses, they're like, what do you, is moral and ethic the same thing? I don't even know the answer to that. Who are these people? Are all like professional tier debaters. What the
But you do not get to mitigate. No.
Oh my god, a killer silver bullet. These are like advanced tier. These are like advanced tier abortion arguments. Why are we watching tier 1 abortion debates? Bro, this abortion debate is more advanced than any other debate I've heard in my entire life on Twitch and YouTube. What? These people are doing a phenomenal job.
You probably do.
Jesus Christ.
So I see we all been getting it on. About that.
Wait, are these people all like 16?
I didn't know what Plan B was until I started having sex. That just like, maybe I missed that day in class, but that was not taught in sex ed. So I didn't know what Plan B was until I started having sex, but now I'm a lot more educated, a lot more comfortable, like I'm on birth control.
Son of a bitch.
But obviously, like, birth control isn't always effective, isn't always accessible. So I understand, like, my privilege in that.
Well, the first time that I had unprotected sex was a couple months ago with my fiance. We're both adults, and we were in a real period of grief because I had just had a miscarriage, I think about a month before, after we'd had protected sex.
The first time that I had unprotected sex was unprotected sex was with the person that I am currently married to.
How
we got
old are
married
these
straight
people?
out of high school.
What the?
I was 18. It was like a week after I graduated. And we're really happy together. And we love the idea of having a child, you know, currently pregnant right now. Second trimester. That's
Are you going to college, or do you have a job? Like, how's that working?
Imagine she gets
so I
debated into
mainly do
aborting her baby
activism.
right
I
here.
try to advocate for people who are in the same position as the person inside of me right now. And I think that the value of their life is intrinsic to every fetus. So honestly, right now, I'm just chilling as an activist.
Jesus, that's your
But do you
full-time
make
job?
money?
Yeah,
Sometimes
true.
if my
Good question. Who is that girl?
followers give me some.
I haven't had sex before. It's not just because I'm Catholic. It's like there are other
You know what a good fucking skit would be? Oh, I have so many good ideas, okay? Is somebody, I don't know how you would make this funny or whatever, but like, if you misgender somebody, but they're cis, you don't actually care that much, right? Like, let's say you see somebody's like, oh, is that a boy or girl, he or she? And then it's like, oh, it's a he. Oh shit, I couldn't tell, sorry. But if it's like, it's a he, and they're trans, now you've like fucked up like a million times more. Like, if you're not sure because they're a little bit androgynous or a little ambiguous, like, oh, is he or she? You don't. But then as soon as like, but they're trans, they're like, oh shit.
reasons as to why I haven't, such as pair bonding, and I think just
Pair
it
bonding
helps to keep the marital act within marriage because, newsflash, sex makes babies, so I think it's just good for a child to have a mother and father because when families are sort of separated, it causes a lot of problems for children, especially like with divorce. Now it's like surveys have shown that divorce is often worse.
Bro ran out of breath from walking from the back of the room.
Because it's just like, at least you know, like when the parents pass, it's like they didn't leave you behind. So
I have 2 questions for you.
Uh-oh.
The first one is, where did you get those surveys from?
I don't remember. I was just in passing, but
That's
I don't
fine.
really know.
Oh, wait, what was the survey? Hold on.
No, it's like surveys have shown that divorce is often worse than the death of a parent, just because it's just like, at least you know, like when the parents pass, it's like they didn't leave you behind. So
Divorce is worse than the death of a parent. What is worse, divorce or death of parent? I'm trying to think of what would be worse. I feel like parental death, it's got to be highly contingent on age. That would be my feeling. Like, if your parents die when you're in your 20s, that's got to be really hard. And before that, it's like 30s. I'm in my 30s. I mean, like, it'll be sad, I guess. I'm heartless. Sorry. 40s and 50s is probably pretty bad because it's your parent dying. That's always sad, but it's also somewhat expected. It would depend on the manner of death too. Like parents like having heart problems for a year and then they die is one thing, versus like your parents die in a car accident would also be another thing. Divorce. I feel like I would believe this guy. I feel like divorce would be worse. Actually, that's what my guess is going to be. Painstakingly assessing their data, the authors of a new study see an unmistakable pattern emerging. Parental separation has stronger and wider effects on mental illness than death. Oh wait, I'm sorry. I totally misinterpreted this question. I thought it was what's worse for you, getting divorced from your significant other, or having a parent die. But this is saying what's worse for the children is having your parents separate or having a parent die. I'm sorry, I totally misunderstood what he was saying. Parental separation has worse effects on your mental health than death?
Worse than death.
I feel like that could be the case, but it's got to be because there's so many other things playing into parental separation. Like a lot of separated families probably have a lot of unhealthy dynamics. That would be my guess, maybe. By the psychological effects of parental death with those of parental separation, the researchers parsed data collected between 93 and 98 from 2,605 male twins from the Virginia population-based twin registry, looking for statistical linkages between parental loss, any loss, death, and separation during childhood, subsequent lifetime risk for 7 common psychiatric and substance use disorders. Assess their data. The authors of the new study see an unmistakable pattern emerging. Parental separation has stronger and wider effects on mental illness than death. Specifically, researchers conclude that parental separation significantly predicted risk for all disorders except phobias. Odds ratios range between 1.45 and 2.03. Looking closer at their data, researchers conclude that parental separation had the strongest impact on risk for depression and drug abuse such dependence. By contrast, parental death was marginally significantly
The voices are knocking.
only risk of phobia and alcohol dependence.
Let them in.
I also feel like that's also true. I'm relying on heavy anecdote here because I've only known a few people like this. I'm relying on heavy anecdote here. I feel like if people, I don't know if I've ever met somebody that's carried trauma from an early parent dying. I don't know if maybe as humans we process death easier, but like I feel like I've met people like, oh yeah, my dad died when I was a teen. I was like, oof, damn. And they're like, no, it's okay. Like I'm like, but I guess they could also have underlying trauma that they are hiding, or they're not like obviously gonna, throw it out. Whereas I've heard a lot more people complain about like if your parents split, there's like shit happening. Yeah, there's probably so many confounding variables in here. Like if a divorce burns over like 3 or 4 years, that would probably be really bad. Yeah, this is what I'm thinking. The effect of parental death persists a relatively short time and its weaker impact on adult psychopathology than that of parental separation. This conclusion, they acknowledge, is in accordance with previous studies that have found no or weak association between parental death and psychiatric disorders. Authors of this study indeed interpret the findings of 2014. So basically, if you're going to get divorced and you really care about your children, you shouldn't get divorced. You should kill your spouse.
I have 2 questions for you. The first one is, where did you get those surveys from?
I don't remember. I was just in passing, but
That's
I don't
fine.
really know.
The second thing I wanted to ask,
I wonder if he quoted this correctly.
Separated, it causes a lot of newsflash. Sex makes babies, so I think it's just good for a child to have a mother and father, because when families are sort of separated, it causes a lot of problems for children, especially like with divorce. Now it's like surveys have shown that divorce is often worse than the death of a parent, just because it's just like, at least you know, like when the parents pass, it's like they didn't leave you behind. So
I have 2 questions.
So he even understated his case. So it's not just simple surveys that have shown, it's been actual peer-reviewed research has shown. So he's very correct on that.
For you. The first one is, where did you get those surveys from?
I don't remember. I was just in passing, but
That's
I don't
fine.
really know.
The second thing I wanted to ask, you said something about sex always making babies. Well, you didn't say always. You said sex makes babies, and I would love to challenge that a little bit, because
It's not the only reason for like sex, because it's like you have the pair bonding and sort of the emotional going on between the two people, but sort of like the telos, the primary purpose of it, sort of is for that. But there's other legitimate sort of secondary reasons.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you would say that the primary purpose of all sex is babies?
Because I wouldn't say all sex, because there's times where you can't conceive because like the woman cycles, so she's not always fertile.
These guys are like seasoned debaters. She's like setting him up for traps. He's like caveating as she's doing it. Wait, why these? Is there like some professional debate school in California that they run kids through or some shit? What the fuck?
Which I think just the natural order of that act is for having children.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think what they were getting at is to not assume that all sex is heterosexual.
Kill me. Kill me. Now we're back in California. Excuse me? Did you just assume heteronormativity in regards to sexual intercourse? You disgusting, white, cis, oppressive, colonialist, white male.
Yeah, that is a pretty heteronormative view. I completely validate and respect that you don't want to have sex for you. But for those of us who can't even...
Bro, when we're talking pro-life or pro-choice, nobody cares about the homos, okay? Nobody gives a f*** about if fucked in the ass or 2 lesbians scissoring in a fucking pro-choice, pro-life conversation. Why would you think this is fucking relevant? Why would you even bring this up right now?
And ever, for any reason, get pregnant during sex, I think it's a little reductive to assume that that's like the reason people would do it.
Wait, what am I
I
even
think
in
there's
here
also
for?
a difference between reproductive sex and non-reproductive
Yeah.
sex.
Yeah.
Like, let's be so for real. There's so many things you can do to not get pregnant and still have sex with somebody.
I'm obviously not Catholic, but I think that, but I think it's also important to remember that, you know, Catholics and people who do believe that sex should be within marriage also acknowledge that there's types of sex, like oral sex, for example, that you don't conceive children by. So I think maybe not to put words in your mouth, but maybe what Luke is referring to specifically is coitus and not other types of sex.
Yeah, because people can mean different things by sex. It's like...
It's a very general term.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Ragini, the director of this episode. Please like this video if you enjoy watching it.
What
and subscribe
up,
to our channel.
Ragini?
Now, let's get back to the video.
I have had an abortion.
I have had an abortion.
Oh!
I had mine about 1.5 years ago. And I've never felt shame, never felt regret. I've never even second-guessed my choice. Surprisingly, my parents are Middle Eastern immigrants, and they were very supportive. The 9 months of pregnancy isn't considered to be a challenge in its own. It's like, oh, you know, you can give the child up for adoption. Oh, there are like resources, there are crisis pregnancy centers. But those 9 months, that's still morning sickness. That's still doctor visits. I had to go to the ER in the very short time that it took me finding out that I was pregnant to getting the actual abortion because I thought I had an ectopic pregnancy because that's what my gynecologist told me. There are so many things to consider. I can't go to school if I'm sick, if I'm already, mental health isn't something that's secure for me. And then on the top of that, I'm gonna have to deal with thinking about this pregnancy. Are people gonna judge me for being a teen mom?
They're gonna judge you.
Okay, so I had an abortion fairly recently. I had one.
What's the one show where the lady's like, I had an abortion, it was twins, and the other one was like, damn, double kill.
Oh my god.
That was so fucked up. Or double homicide, Jesus.
You just had an abortion? Twins?
Twins.
Yeah, double homicide.
About 2 to 3 days before my recent birthday last year in November. It was a very unexpected event. I remember having symptoms almost immediately. I was about 6 weeks, I believe.
What the fuck am I doing
5
here?
weeks and 7 days. I actually did not suspect I was pregnant because I had been going through some traumatic life events that threw my cycle off. My period was on average 40 days late, so I just didn't suspect anything when I was 6 days late that past cycle. And my boyfriend, who I was confiding in at the time and telling about my current bodily circumstances, had a feeling beyond me, the woman in this equation who should know what's going on. He was the one that prompted me to go get a test.
Yeah, boyfriends always have a feeling. As soon as you ever, I love how women will do this shit, okay? Women will be talking to you casually on the phone, okay? And she'll say some shit like, oh, it's kind of weird, like my period's 4 days late. Anyway, yeah, I'm gonna go hang out with Rebecca later and maybe we can, you see each other tonight. Like they'll just say shit like that, right? Now, I don't know, because women have different periods all the time and your shit is all fucked and your cycles are doing all crazy shit. Listen, if you're a man and you hear some shit like that, that is the only thing you think about for the rest of the fucking day, okay? You are hounding the bathroom trash can, waiting for some tampons to show up. You're like, bro, how are you just gonna say some shit like your period is 4 days late? Okay? I'm about to start shoving you down the stairs if you're not gonna get a pregnancy test. What are we doing right now, okay? Jesus.
Because he felt that I was pregnant, and when we found out, it was a shock. I'm the type of person when in my relationships, I make very clear my positions on how I am with abortion and pregnancy and child rearing. I'm very transparent in that matter because there should be no room for error in that case, but that's because I'm fortunate enough to be educated in that manner. I'm a volunteer with Planned Parenthood, so I knew the resources available to me, and at that time, when I did conceive, it was not when I was on birth control, and so partially, I take responsibility for the circumstances that led to the conception of that pregnancy. Although I'm very grateful and I'm very appreciative that I had access to this form of healthcare, it was something that I grieved heavily. It was something that my boyfriend grieved heavily. We were not ecstatic to have done this. We were not happy that we had to make this choice. But because of our plans as individuals, as adults, and our life plan is to get married, is to complete school, and to maximize our chances of being the parents that we want to be, I felt it irresponsible to be selfish and say, well, I want a baby and I don't want to make that hard choice to terminate. But when you think of somebody else, and that would have been another individual, you have to think what's best for them if they were to be born. And I'm not in a position to where I could emotionally, financially, nor physically provide for a child. Whereas if I would do the hard thing now, later on down the line, when I improve my circumstances, I can be the mother that I want to be instead of disadvantaging myself and that person who did not act.
Somebody in chat said this sounds like a script. It's probably something she has, I don't want to say rehearsed, but having an abortion for a lot of people is a pretty big deal, and I'm sure that she probably had to put like a considerable amount of thought into it, and I'm sure she's like second guessed herself and everything too. So it probably feels a little bit like a script, but just because she's probably personally thought about it so much, that's not very surprising at all.
Asked to be put in that situation.
Thank you for sharing those experiences with us, because I could hear in your voice, even though I couldn't see your face.
I'll be right back.
It's difficult to share. And I'm so sorry that you had that period of grief and those experiences.
Thank you.
I've miscarried twice.
Pause this. Don't let me die.
And taking the abortion pill, I know, though it is a different process, it's not dissimilar in the function of it to a miscarriage. But you did say something that I thought was interesting. You said you think it's selfish to bring a child into a situation where you know that maybe you're not economically stable or you're not maybe in the best emotional state to have a child. And my mother has 5 children. And when I was born, my father was leaving. He was abusive.
Oh, is she about to give the... It worked out great for us.
We were on food stamps. She was in college. She was waiting tables and sweeping under chairs when she was in labor with me.
She's about to make this girl
so
second
I
guess.
want to sympathize with that and say I know exactly
her abortion,
that kind of
Jesus.
economic struggle, that emotional struggle that a lot of women are in. But I don't think it's fair to say that people who are in poverty or people who might have mental health or emotional issues are selfish for bringing children into those situations. Because I think that you can still have and love a child in those situations. And I don't think that having children is something that we should reserve for the wealthy, for the people who don't have mental health issues. I don't think it's selfish for people who are not in those positions of privilege to have children.
The rich for the white, for those who are in a position.
Right, so I just want to quickly respond to you, and there's a reason why I included that in my personal statement. It's because that's a personal belief that I ascribe to myself. I don't think generally that it is selfish to bring children into your circumstances. I retract myself from in putting my personal beliefs onto other people's experiences. I only speak from how I feel, because I'm the king of my own fate. And in the same way that your mother chose to have 5 children, I chose not to. But I don't want to ever take that away from anybody. I think if you feel like you have the means and you have the willpower to be a mother, to be a father, you do that. But that doesn't give you the right to determine for other people that they should also do the same.
Well, I think that's kind of ironic, personally, because I feel like that's exactly the point of the question. It's whenever a person decides to have an abortion, whenever a doctor decides to perform an abortion, whenever a medical professional prescribes an abortion pill, they are making a choice for that child and pushing that onto the unborn person. Then they are saying that the unborn person, you don't deserve to live. You don't have the right to live. You are not rich enough to live. You are not privileged enough to live. You are not white enough to live.
What about the woman, though? Like like, I've had this conversation with so many pro-life people, and it's always, oh, the fetus, the embryo, this unborn life. And I'm like, what about me? But I was actually going through it. You can have all these hypotheticals about you're pushing this onto the unborn life. First of all, they never existed. They are not aware of their existence. It's not a hypothetical about what they could have become or you know, you're not giving them the right to life. They never existed.
First of all, they existed scientifically. Scientifically, an unborn fetus matches all of the qualifications that NASA has for a living individual organism.
NASA.
Secondly, I'd like to say, what right does anybody have to mitigate the outcomes of their own mistakes by oppressing another human being inside of them, by using unjust violence and excessive force against a peaceful being inside of them?
What about for incest?
I got pregnant from rape.
Jesus.
4 years ago, I got pregnant from rape.
Jesus.
I was raped for years of my life.
Jesus
I have
Christ.
physical symptoms of that. I have reproductive issues.
Okay. How did this girl go from, well, early in my life, I was introduced to sexual activity and I wasn't even ready for it. And then like 20 minutes later, she was like, I was actually raped for years, okay? Jesus.
As a result of that. But I think it's important to say that babies like my daughter Rachel, as I talked about before.
Wait, what screen was
and
that just
babies
on?
like
Where I
my
could claim
daughter Mira,
shit?
who I got pregnant with consensually, are the same. They're DNA-wise, there is nothing different in the DNA, the human DNA, between a baby who's conceived in rape and a baby who's conceived consensually.
So you're telling rape women that they should be having their children? Are you going to make that decision for women that are just because your experience? You think that it ended up being a good idea for you to have these children? Are you then going to stand here and say that all women should have their children?
Are you going to stand here and say that children who are conceived in rape are somehow different than children who are conceived consensually?
No, because I don't see a difference.
Then why are you bringing it up?
I would also say that abortion is not evidence-based care for victims. There's no research that shows that the outcomes of victims getting an abortion is better than those who do not. So if we want to go purely based off of medical science and evidence-based care...
I bet the outcomes are better socioeconomically.
No.
Yeah, I will push back that we do have statistical evidence that shows that women who have access to abortion and in societies where abortion is accessible, there is an overwhelming decrease in the amount of abortions obtained, and there's also an increase in the economic, emotional, and physical advancements of the people who have access to that care. And I will acknowledge, because I do think that what was inside of me, what was inside of you, I personally believe it is a life. It is. I mean, I held mine in my hands, but to equate that to me, an already birthed human being, this thing, I have a photo of it in my phone. I was gonna bring my ultrasound
Photo
as well.
of it?
I thought that would be triggering for some people. But what I possessed in my hands when I took it out of my pants, when I expelled it from my body, I think it is ludicrous to equate that to me. There was no head, there was no arms, there was no legs, there was nothing there.
How far along were you?
I was 5 weeks and 7 days.
You were 5 weeks and 7 days?
Yes. And I had the privilege.
Do you know that at 5 weeks a baby has a heartbeat?
Bro.
It does not.
First of all,
it does not.
It has a two-chambered heart.
No, heart cells
It does
can
not.
beat in a petri dish if you remove it. Heart cells, it's electrical impulses, but I mean, when we talk about life, and this is my personal opinion, I don't think when you draw the conclusion of what is life, I don't think that is a legal question. I think that is a moral and philosophical argument. And when you try and establish what is life, I mean, there are plenty of instances where we acknowledge that there is life, and yet we make decisions for them. When people are brain dead, we acknowledge that there is life there, and yet they are dead. I feel like when you try and say, well, this is life, so therefore it is deserving of rights, we extend more rights to someone who is hooked up to a machine, keeping them breathing without any conscious experience, and we extend to them more humanity than a woman and her body. And my argument is simply bodily autonomy. I think in no circumstance shall we force somebody, should the state, I should say, should the government compel somebody to use their body against their will, even if they are personally responsible for the individual. It's the reason why, even if you have a child and that child needs you for bone marrow or blood transfusions, the state cannot compel you and hook you up to a machine against your will to force you to keep that individual alive. And I think and when we live in a democracy and we prioritize human rights, you have to put bodily autonomy above and preserve it regardless, even if you are a drunk driver and your irresponsible, illegal actions led to the harm of another person. The state cannot put you in a position where your body must be used as a resource against your will. I think it is a violation.
Okay,
And
firstly,
what you would like
I asked you about
All those
evidence-based
Judith
care
Thompson
involving
arguments.
rape victims.
Okay.
Not economic outcomes after a random
I wasn't
person keeps a
arguing off the
pregnancy.
rape.
Well, yeah, well, as I said, you said, yes, we do have statistics, and then you brought statistics that had nothing to do with what I said. I would also like to say that the whole bodily autonomy argument, it doesn't hold up. Pregnancy is ordinary and healthy care 99% of the time.
Why can't I
Pregnancy
get
is
in
not
here?
comparable to hooking you up to a random person. Your offspring is your child. They are genetically and emotionally related to you from the moment they are inside of you. My baby.
Who are these these people? Bro, what the fuck? No offense, but like when I meet like random kids on college campuses, they're like, what do you, is moral and ethic the same thing? I don't even know the answer to that. But like, who are these people? Are all like fucking professional tier fucking debaters. What the fuck? Jesus.
Baby is literally grimacing right now inside of me. They can make squint faces. So it's not even comparable, the relationship between a child and the relationship between a rando. But you do not get to mitigate the outcomes of your choices by violently ending the life of another human being that you are responsible for bringing into dependency on.
Even if I invited someone into my own home, a friend, a family member, I have the means, if I choose, if I tell them I do not want you there, by my own choices, I allowed that person into my home, into my space, into my domain, and then I change my mind and I rescind my consent. We have the ability, it's called self-defense. And I'm nowhere near arguing that pregnancy, let me clarify now before you jump to conclusions about what I'm saying. We have no.
Oh my God, a killer silver bullet. These are like advanced tier. These are like advanced tier abortion arguments. Upgrade your potions, you're gonna die soon. My potions are upgraded, you fucking moron. I can't upgrade to level 20. The question afterwards for the invite, if I invite somebody to my home, I have a right to kick them out. What if you invite somebody into your home and then it begins snowstorming, and if you kick them out, they'll die in the snowstorm? Do you have a right to kick them out of your house then, or do they have a right to the resource in your house? Oh, I wonder if I don't think she'll ask that, but.
Issue with, and again, I'm not saying that pregnancy is the same as self-defense, but in those arguments, even when you put yourself and you put another person to a state of dependency, when you invite them into your home, you have the means to remove them. And I think when it comes to your body, and I'm just arguing in terms of the state, there's a lot of things that I disagree with in terms of like people smoking cigarettes, because we have evidence that shows secondhand smoke kills. You can kill somebody from the means of you having an addiction to cigarettes, but should we punish that person for the choice that they made simply because they?
But can I ask something? What about the child inside of you?
There was, what I passed in my hands was not a child, and I think it is very disingenuous to say what I held in my hand is the you, is any of you. It just wasn't.
What was it then?
An embryo. It's like a clump of
What's
cells.
an embryo? What is an embryo?
It's a clump of cells.
Well, an embryo is just a term
It's an
for
organized
the
body.
stage of
It's
a
not
certain
the
stage of
stage. So when we
development
talk about
in the process of entire human life.
Right, I agree.
So it is.
Why are we watching tier 1 abortion debates? Bro, this abortion debate is more advanced than any other debate I've heard in my entire life on Twitch and YouTube. What? These people are doing a phenomenal job.
So it's a human life, so you just
But
agree.
is the egg unfertilized? Is that a human being?
No, because fertilization.
Hold on. One at a time. I want to hear what you guys have to say.
So an egg is distinct from an embryo because an embryo is a genetically distinct whole organism. It's not merely just a part like skin cells, egg, sperm.
Okay, hold on, wait. Tab W. What is this? 35 lock.
Because we can tell that because if you were to apply the net test, so like any amount of nutrition, any environment, or any amount of time, like an embryo will develop into a mature member of its species, but sperm, eggs, skin cells, tumors, they're not going to develop into a whole organism, so it's not the same thing.
Oh yeah, of course, I do. I absolutely agree. I think an embryo is a stage of development, but I don't think you afford that stage of development the same human rights that you would a full-grown human being.
And why is that?
It's the reason why we make a distinction between children and adults. A child can develop into an adult. Do we automatically ascribe them, you can drink, you can vote? Well, they are not that yet. And why make that distinction but then say
How does that give us the authority to kill the child?
I'm not saying give you the authority to kill a child, but I think if that the argument that I'm making is I feel like there is a fundamental difference between something being attached to you, reliant on your resources, and something being dependent on you for other types of resources beyond your physical body. It's the reason why I'm making a reference to blood transfusions and organ donations, because that is directly attributing what your body needs to survive to give to somebody else to help them live, as opposed to a child that is already born that simply needs your labor and financial resources to keep them alive and support their already existence and living on their own.
But when we're talking about the value of human life, I don't think it's at all fair to say that an unborn child is worth more than their mother or who would be their mother. I don't think it's fair to say that the mother's needs and her state of life or their state of life don't matter in that situation, because they do. And it's not this like killing a fetus for fun. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to be in that situation or to have an abortion. But like, you can't just act like we always should be prioritizing this, what isn't even a child yet.
But none of us are saying we're prioritizing the child over the mother. We're saying,
yes, you are. Yes, you are.
What happens during pregnancy?
What happens during pregnancy? Yeah. The mother is trying to think of the word.
Succumbing?
Gestating.
Succumbing.
The mother is giving life to the fetus. The mother is supporting the fetus's life as it grows. And so what we're saying is that the child and the mother should be equally supported through the pregnancy.
Are they? No.
We're not saying that they are.
We're not saying that they are.
So supporting the financial needs of a mother is a need that can be handled through nonviolent means, whereas you guys are advocating for violent means to end the life of a person.
No, it's not violent.
Yeah, it is violent to rip, suction, starve. It is violent to take limbs off of people. It is violent to induce a heart attack. Yeah, and you starved. You starved your embryo. That's what happened. That's how the pill works.
You probably do that
Jesus Christ.
in labs somewhere. That's how you
I do that
in germ cells.
But it's a human being. I feel like we keep getting away from the fact
it's not
that
though.
but
There's nothing
science
to get away
states
from.
that life begins at conception. It's a human embryo.
Science does not say that. The Bible says that.
God
I have
damn.
a question for you really quick.
I have
Let's move on to the next topic.
Investigate
I'd
the
rather
villagers'
abort a
home.
child than put them through the foster care system.
Villagers' homes.
Jesus.
And this is like, I didn't consider this until I myself was put into that situation
What am I
where
supposed to do here?
it's not just get pregnant, put the kid in the foster system. It's that, again, like I said, 9 months of pregnancy. And I would not go through those 9 months of pregnancy, even though if I had the option of giving my kid up to the foster care system, like, you have to still go through those 9 months of pregnancy. It's not just, you can just drop it off.
So I feel like first, before we get into this conversation, we need to establish how foster care works. As someone who is in the system, I understand how the system works. As someone whose parents were foster parents, I understand the system is not something you can willingly just register your child for, not like the adoption system. Foster care is a system of the government to protect children who are in unsafe environments, that they see the child as being in an unsafe environment. My mother was a drug addict. We were living in government housing. We were homeless multiple times. My mother was severely addicted to alcohol, just not at a time in her place where she could really have a family, but she did have a family. And so my grandmother came and watched us. And
can't get out.
My grandmother, over time, just really was convicted, because she was a devout Christian woman, of the reality that this is no environment for a child to grow up in. And she wanted to do something, if anything, to help us have a better life. And she knew financially she could not take us in, but she wanted to do something. So she called CPS, and CPS came and took me and my siblings away. Now, did I have the best experience of foster care? Absolutely not. I still live today with bruises and sores on my body from foster care. And I was in there up until I was 19 months old. I was a baby, but it still affects me to this day. And I really struggle when I hear people say that, like, a child in foster care is somehow less valuable because of the way that the government treats children in foster care, because I just don't think that's a correct opinion to have. To treat a child as less valuable is dehumanizing, and I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm 1000% against dehumanization of any human being whatsoever.
I don't think anyone is saying that foster care kids are less valuable.
I am.
Like, you...
Okay, you're gonna have to just listen to this. Oh wait, actually, could I give you this on OBS?
Didn't mean that, did you? No, nobody's saying that. I just wanted to make that clear. Do you have a uterus?
Oh my God, it does.
I do not have a uterus.
You do not have a uterus. So I'm not saying that your opinion is invalid or that you should not be included in this discussion, but I'm saying that that's important to keep in mind, is that you could never be in this position of having to decide whether you in your body want to keep and raise a child from your body.
You are arguing for the slaughter of human beings because you're pro-choice. And I'm standing here in where a fetus cannot...
Killing a fetus, so it's not a strong word.
It's really not. But can I just finish my statement?
Holocausting of fetuses.
We're standing here in defense of the children because they do not get that voice, because they do not have that voice because they are in the womb.
I'm leveling up, stay man.
I'm assuming you will, right?
That's not an argument you can make because I am currently not in the financial place to adopt. But it is a choice that I could make to become a foster parent. The issue is that becoming a foster parent is something that you register with the state. It's not as easy as just saying like, well, you can just one day become a foster parent. It is a long, tedious process. It's expensive. There's tons of things that go into it.
Yeah. I would also say thousands of dollars.
You guys had something to say
We're
as
talking
well.
about who should have a voice in this discussion, but it's like the unborn don't have a voice. They're not yet able to have a voice, but they are still human beings with dignity, and we ought to respect that. So I think it's like, I think we really need to sort of figure out, what are we talking about here? Because if abortion doesn't kill human beings, then no justification is necessary. However, if it does kill human beings, no justification is adequate.
I always say that if murder was happening at the rate that abortions happen at, it would be Armageddon. Like, it is just absolute. Women, I think it's like a quarter of women will have an abortion in their lifetime. If that was happening, if an eighth of the population was being murdered, then it would be the purge.
Why do you think we're so distraught?
Be the fucking purge.
It doesn't affect you though. But
it doesn't affect us.
It doesn't. If I hadn't told you, you wouldn't know.
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
But why is
every single person, even if they are not under my jurisdiction, the oppression of that person is my business. And that's what it is.
I respect that approach.
To us, it sort of sounds like we're saying it's like if you don't want an abortion, sort of just don't have one. But we hear it sort of in the same way. It's like if you don't like slavery, don't have a slave. We hear it sort of in the same ways.
Oh no, true actually, true.
Like it's sort of the destruction of the dignity of a human person. Like abortion and slavery violate the dignity of a human person.
So you're comparing abortion?
I actually agree with that. I actually agree with that. And I think that ties in nicely to this whole systems and foster care argument, because people argued vehemently at the time in which we were about to end slavery that we should not end slavery because we don't have the systems. We don't have the systems ready for all of the slaves that we're now...
I'm sorry. Okay. It's just a boss in a blue dungeon. I should be able to kill this and be fine, right? If I die, I'm done with this fuck shit game, okay? 2 potions. I'm a rogue. Okay, just gonna right-click a bunch, shadow step behind, dash around, easy. Okay. Okay.
Is he listening to Final Fantasy music? What the fuck?
Okay. Sorry, I'm done. Okay.
I'll be free. There's no jobs out there for them. They don't have any land. Oh, we need to keep them as slaves until we have the right system. No, you don't get to degrade the dignity of another human being until you're ready for them to be here.
And black people are still suffering today.
Until you're ready. Until you are ready for them to live dignified lives. That's unjust.
Damn.
I want to touch on the
white moderate, the white aborter.
Foster care system, and I just wanted to emphasize that for me, I didn't take into consideration the foster care. I don't feel like anybody is less than. I don't think that you're less than. I think me and you are entitled to the same rights. Of course, just personally, when I made my decision, it wasn't a matter of I don't want my child to go to the foster care or be adopted out. That wasn't the question. What I took into consideration, what my boyfriend and I decided together was we did not want to put me through the physical constraints of pregnancy without him, because my boyfriend, he is a very traditional Christian, and I'm no longer religious. I grew up in the Catholic Church, and I'm not religious anymore, but I respect his views, and he carries a lot of views that you have, but because of his consideration to me and his approach to the family structure, he knew that he was not in a position to take care of me in that vulnerable time. In the weeks that I was pregnant, it was very...
Wait, is Diablo 4 even that much of an improvement? Diablo 3 graphics wise, it looks about the same. You want an ultra hot take? If you're looking for huge improvements in graphics, play consoles. Consoles have had dramatic improvements in graphics, I think, over the past decades. PC, over the past decade, I think it's like gotten okayly better, but not that much, I don't think. That'd be my, I think so. Like, I'm curious, when did The Witcher 3 come out? Like, I feel like if I go back and I look, like, BioShock 1 and BioShock 2 both looked pretty good. Those games are like 2000, oof, what? I want to say when I played BioShock 1, I think Rachel watched me play that game. So that must have been like 2008 or something.
Fuck.
I'm not saying that graphics haven't improved at all, but I'm saying like they're not like, I don't think they're massively improved. Consoles have gotten a lot better, but play BioShock 1 now, it's aged a lot more than you thought. Hold on. BioShock 1 gameplay.
Character now. Hold on, let's go to upstairs. This is a very convenient. Hey. It's the first human. I don't know if that's a human, but that's the. I am literally like terrified right now. What do you want me to do, dude? Who wants to get beat with a wrench?
I mean, it doesn't look amazing for sure. But like this game is 15 years old.
Son of a bitch.
Right? Now, this isn't fair, but like go 10 years before this game. Compare a game, so this is back in 2008, I think this released. Now compare this with a game that released in like 1993, another 15 years. What were we, 1993, was that the Nintendo? But, okay, sorry.
Extremely hard for me. It was mentally and physically draining. The changes that were going on, it was to the point where I could not participate in the daily activities that one does, go to work, feed themselves, get out of bed. It was very psychologically difficult in that short period of time. And we knew at that point that it was going to be a very demanding and laborious pregnancy had I gone through with it. But because of how he feels and his responsibility and his duties that he places on himself as a man, he wanted to make sure that that experience of pregnancy, and when we do decide to have a child, I'm in a point where I can be cared for appropriately. Just the way I waited out, and again, it wasn't because I, this aversion to the foster care. In fact, I feel like we should better resources for those children because they have every right to be here. I'm more so focused on whether or not, again, should the government enforce and place themselves in such a personal matter when it's a matter of people using their bodies.
I would think most of us in some regard agree with you. I can't speak for everyone here. I don't know everyone's various political beliefs. I think most of us would agree with you, and that's why we're pro-life, is because we see it as that's what the government is doing to children in the womb. The reality that the government could have just, because of the way that the government works and because of the way that the abortion system works, the reality that I just could be non-existent and not exist at all is horrifying. And the reality that my memory, my life, my genetic makeup, the people that fought for years to give me rights, that can all just be erased. It's horrifying.
But it would have never happened. It's not like it happened and then it was erased.
I was conceived. My mother had the option to abort.
Yeah.
Therefore, it could have happened.
Parents should be informed if their teen is seeking an abortion.
God damn it.
So when I was being sexually abused, my parents didn't know. When my rapist found out that I had a pregnancy scare, he was like, I will f***ing kill you.
Damn.
If this is the situation, I'll kill you. And I think that if I had gone into an abortion facility, as many girls and women have, and been forced by my rapist to have an abortion, I think that this is another I guess, part of the system where mandatory reporting fails, as it has many times in abortion facilities, particularly in Planned Parenthood. Parents need to be informed if their child's being sexually abused, and because mandatory reporting often fails in this way, because Planned Parenthood is a business and they make money off of what they do, I think that it's really important for the parents at least to have this knowledge and to have this understanding.
Yeah, I think it's a really kind of tricky situation and topic to discuss just because there are so many, like there's such a breadth of situations that can occur and have occurred. And I'm so sorry for what you went through, by the way, but like that situation is really awful, and it definitely highlights how having parental oversight is good and important in certain situations, but also like there are situations where young people are in situations with abusive households, abusive parents, who, if they found out that that teenager, that child was attempting to do something to care for themselves and to help themselves live the life that they need to, or for their health, or whatever reason they might have for doing it, they'll be prevented from seeking care of any kind, not even just like an abortion. They'll be prevented from seeking any kind of sexual wellness care, health care, of any sort, because their parent is aware that they were looking for that kind of support.
And I'd like to go off of what you're saying. I agree full-heartedly that there are different situations where it could be dangerous for the individual to tell their parents, and that's why I think pregnancy resource centers, which is what we support, are such a valuable tool, because they have the right to put protections over this young individual or older individual. And if they are in an unsafe situation, they house them, they feed them, they get them a job away from the area where they are. You know, they do stuff to help, but also those situations and the situation of the child was conceived, that child still has value. So that's why I'm a firm believer in protecting both the mother and the child.
I mean, I would also like to say that, like, as much as young people don't like to hear it, and as much as I didn't like to hear it myself because I had, you know, a messed up household, because I had a parent who was not a safe parent. I think that parents have rights. Uniquely, like the Ohio Initiative for Choice right now is trying to attack parents' rights, trying to make it so that people can get medical procedures or supposed medical procedures in abortions and not have to notify their parents.
Wait, what's going on here?
There have been teenagers and young women who have died from abortion procedures.
We have people that go and counsel outside of Planned Parenthoods and abortion facilities, and we've seen, like, we've documented, reported to the state suspicious behavior of people bringing busloads of minors in to have abortions.
What?
And
Busloads?
you know, it's one of those things that we just have to look at the reality and we have to address it.
There's actually statistics that say
Holy
that
shit.
the majority of women who have undergone sex trafficking report having more than one forced abortion, specifically saying forced abortion.
And we are against that too, right? We are against people being forced into abortions as much as anything else.
I think parents have an obligation to care for the child that they have in their care, and I think it is a parent's responsibility to support that child, of course, but then again, I feel like I'm speaking from a privilege of where
Privilege.
I obtained mine when I was already a legal adult, so I didn't have to tell my parents. I just know for me personally, because I went to Planned Parenthood to obtain my abortion, and even when I obtained my birth control and my routine screenings from them, some of the questions that they always asked me was, are you safe? Are you in a safe situation? Are you doing this because you consented to it? When I obtained my abortion, they asked me, is someone forcing you? And they have signs all over in the clinic telling them, or telling patients that they are obligated to report if you are being sex trafficked or abused in some way.
The reason I disagreed was because I believe the prompt said teens should have to come to their parents. I am acquainted with someone who just had an abortion who is the same age as us, and she did not tell her parents. She has yet to tell her parents.
Well, I think we're talking about telling parents before the procedure, particularly, because that has ramifications. I mean, I'm sure afterwards there's some ramifications, but I think parents, like I said, would have the right to know before you get the procedure.
I have a question. Because I think a lot of us are coming from the approach of like minors, but I'm saying it specifically with my case because I was already legally an adult when I had mine. Do you feel like even in cases, although we are teens here, I'm still legally an adult, should my medical information, now that I am legally able to obtain care on my own, because that's where I'm gonna operate from, should, even against my wishes, should they be informed? Because I think for me, with such a sensitive topic, I want to go to them when I'm ready, because I'm coming here now sharing my story, but I was not prepared to come out with mine because it's still something that I grieve with to this day, still something that my boyfriend and I, we still tackle with every day. But I just don't agree with the idea that even though I'm a teenager, I'm still an adult and I should still have my
I think when people say teenagers, they mean minors,
my
right?
Private medical information to my parent. Now that I'm willing and able to make that choice, that should be violated.
I think that we would all agree that, like, for an adult, you know, no, if you're a legal adult, you shouldn't have to tell your parents.
Yeah.
However, I think we're specifically talking about minors.
Okay.
Yes, obviously.
It's possible to find a middle
Obviously.
ground on the issue of abortion.
Not possible.
Ooh, impossible.
I think there's some ways to find some middle grounds.
Yeah, I think we already have here today on like certain parts of it.
But that's on parts of it, not on the abortion issue itself.
Thank you guys for your time and your vulnerability. I appreciate hearing new experiences.
The trans athlete is going to do a lot to like foster a lot of really bad will against like trans people in general. I think it's a really good turf argument for, well, look, these people just want to destroy women's spaces. Everybody else.
These guys are like seasoned.
Meaning I can never be nuanced because it's by your definition. You've already defined it away as obfuscation. That's my issue. Okay, go ahead. You can respond.
Okay, so the reason I said I think you're doing it now is that you are choosing my example for me. If you really wanted to know, if you're going to say, okay,
where the
point
fuck
by
am I
point,
going?
like a list within a list, how are you making the determination that I'm obfuscating? And then I say, well, one example is you contradicting yourself. And then you say, okay, I'm going to latch onto that point. So within that point, how do you know I'm contradicting myself? Then you said, every time I introduce nuance, you're going to say I'm contradicting myself. But that's not true. I didn't say that. You're tautologically claiming on my behalf that there is no difference between introducing nuance and obfuscation when you just asked me if there's a difference, and I said yes. So
yeah, but you gave me
not every time you introduce nuance is to obfuscate, but then you just said on my behalf. Every time I introduce nuance, you say I'm obfuscating, but that's not true.
It's weird for you to say contradiction is evidence of obfuscation when we're literally arguing about whether or not I'm contradicting myself. That's the subject of the debate. I don't think that defining a word in two different contexts in different ways is contradiction, but you do. But that's fine that we disagree on that. But you can say our disagreement there is evidence that you're wrong. Well, hold on, that's literally what we're arguing about.
Literally.
It started out as you asking me, I thought my thought process for what makes me say something like, I think you're obfuscating.
Okay.
You said, how do you determine that versus introducing nuance? You asked me, is there a difference? I said, yes. Right? And then I'm going through my thought process, but now you're turning my thought process not just into a one bullet point of it, not just into a claim I'm making generally, which I'm not, into a claim I'm making about a specific point of your choosing now. But
you can choose your own example if you want. I just want to go. I just want to get it clear.
You just tried to choose it for me.
Okay, I'm so sorry, Max. You can choose it.
I don't want an apology. I'm just pointing out that, like, I feel
I'm
like
giving a hypothetical example to try to test your thing. But if you don't like my example, you can say Destiny. This is disanalogous for this reason. Or Steven, this is disanalogous for this reason. Let me use this example instead. You could just give that example instead of saying you're being bad faith by giving an example. So you can provide your own example if you'd like. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. I think that it is. Do you want me to give you an example of you contradicting yourself and why I think it was obfuscation?
Sure.
Sure.
Or if you can't think of a particular one, give an example of it. You don't have to.
Well,
remember
I think it is self-contradictory to claim that you have no control over the definition of the word Nazi in your fan base or in your community, and then to also claim that the reason you don't exert control over it is because you don't care. And then also give a bunch of examples of times where you did exert control over the word Nazi in your community. Those to me, all those stances all contradict each other.
Okay. Tell me if this series of statements implies a contradiction. Okay?
Okay.
So number one, I can't control people's engagement with media outside of my community. Do you agree with that?
I don't think you can totally control it, but I think you have a lot of sway over how your community views the media. For example, like with Kyle Rittenhouse. I think that you could basically control how people who follow you interpret other people talking about Kyle Rittenhouse, if they're big fans of yours.
Okay, I'm gonna ask this again. I can't control my community's engagement with political content outside of mine. I might be able to say, like, you could maybe look at it this way or that way, but they can watch stuff other than me, right? And they can take opinions outside of my. I can't not their media diet 100%.
No, but you can control what they see when they see the same thing.
I don't know what that means. If somebody turns my stream off and they go watch Hassan or Vosh, I've lost control of that viewer for a bit.
No, you can totally control the narrative about other streamers and figures. If the person is like a huge fan of yours, you can absolutely color their view of anything you want.
Can't other people color their view of me? Couldn't Vosh or Hassan color one of my viewers' views of me?
Not the same way that you can. No, when somebody is a fan or a super fan of yours, like it doesn't matter what anybody else says about you.
Okay, so the people in my subreddit that are on your side, of which there were many threads this morning, are those, I lost all of those people as fans, they're not my fans anymore?
No, they are your fans. This is a temporary, like them viewing you as evasive or whatever. They're still fans of yours.
Okay,
though.
so then
they still
in
love
this
you
sense, another content creator, another figure has influenced their view of something that's in a way outside of my control.
Okay, you just said like an hour ago on stream, you said
why are we...
You said you cannot tell how people actually felt about the argument with me anymore because you went over it on stream. You said once I go over something on stream, that colors my audience's perception of it so much that I no longer can even ask them what they think.
Okay, this is not a contradiction to anything that I'm saying right now.
So
I'm gonna ask the first question. We can deal with that subject later if you want. I'm gonna ask again. Okay. I can't believe that you're not willing to give this point. I do not control 100% of my viewers' media digest. I can't do that. They watch other stuff besides me sometimes.
Yes,
Okay?
you do not 100% control it.
Okay. I can't control how words are used in other communities. Do you agree with that?
I think you can influence how words are used in some other communities, but you don't have total control over it. I agree with that.
Okay. I don't have control how words are used in other communities. If I don't control how Vosh or Hassan uses words.
That's true.
Okay. I can speak up when I think a word is used incorrectly in my community. When somebody's watching me, right? I can do that.
Yes.
Okay. And then the fourth claim, probably the most contentious one, maybe the one that we'll fight over the most, is I can't remove all context or all understanding that people have of a word outside of my community.
You cannot remove all context. Of course not.
So for instance, I very much feel like pedophile means attraction to a prepubescent person. I'm not choosing this for you, but this is one that might. Okay.
Hey.
I think that pedophile means attraction to a prepubescent person. Period. Full stop. That's what pedophile means to me. But there's probably a lot of people in my community that would still say like, oh, a 30-year-old attracted to a 16-year-old is a pedophile. There's still probably a lot of people that would say that, right?
Yeah. Right.
So I'm going to run through these one more time. I can't control my community's engagement with political content outside of my community. Maybe I can influence the way they view it when they come back into my community and I go over whatever, but I can't control, like, if they go watch Vosh or Hassan or something, I have no control of them in that time period. They're off watching something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I can't control how words are used in those other communities. So if Vosh uses fascist for whatever reason, I have no control over that. Yeah?
I think you can influence it indirectly, but no, you don't have direct total control over it.
I can speak up in my community when I think a word is used incorrectly. Okay, yeah?
Yeah.
I can't, and then four is, I can't totally redefine a word in my community. I can push for how I want something to be, but I can't totally like rewrite everybody's brains in my community. They're still gonna have a whole bunch of external context for what words mean, and I can't control that 100%. I can push them in a certain direction.
Yeah, any of these would be an absurd claim to make.
Okay.
That you have total
Completely
control over any of
absurd.
these things. Also, the last point of self-contradiction was that you don't care.
Okay. Given all 4 of these premises, I'm going to reread your statement that you say is full of contradictions. So you're saying that I'm making it's self-contradictory to claim that I have no control over the definition of the word Nazi in your community. So I think this is dealt with in a way in premise 2 and 3, that in my community, people are bringing with them preconceived notions of Nazi into my community, and I don't have control of that fully, and I can't rewrite that fully. So when I say, if we want to be charitable to me, I'm not going to say I don't have no control over the definition, but I can't rewrite that completely.
Well, which is it? Because I didn't make the claim that you can rewrite it completely.
Okay,
I just think I think you have a large degree of control over how the word Nazi is used in your community.
Okay. I need you to apply the basest level of charitability to what I'm saying. Okay, because you're treating me like an unmitigated retard. Do you think that I would say that I have absolutely no control over what anybody in my community says? Do you think I would ever make a statement like that?
No, but you came kind of close last night. I think you said I can't control what my community says, how my community defines this word. And then when I pressed you on it, you said, well, I don't care. I don't care to define it in a certain way. And then I said, well, what about all these other statements you're making where you are defining it in a certain way?
Okay, we're going to dive into these statements because they're proving everything I've said.
Okay.
When I say this sentence, I can't control how my community defines a word, what do you mean by that? Because I can read this, and in the context of what I know about me, and what you should know about me, and what everybody knows about me, I think there's a very obvious way to read that statement. You tell me what you think that statement means. When I say, I can't control how my community defines a word.
I think my problem with it is that there are, I did not interpret you as meaning 100% control. And I don't think you interpreted me as meaning 100% control.
Okay, here we go.
I don't think either of us thought that the other person meant that. And
Okay.
yet, in your counterexample here, you're asking me, do I have 100% control? Which I don't think is relevant because I don't think that's what either of us meant. So I assume, when I say you have control over how people use this word, I assumed you know that I mean you have a large degree of control. That you're not going to see a DGGer saying pedophile the same way a Voshvan does because of you, because you have changed how they think of that word.
Potentially. Okay, but
So
focusing on this,
general
I
amount of
can't.
control.
So when I say I can't control how my community defines a word, what do you think I'm probably saying there? Just talk about this statement. I can't control how my community defines a word. What do you think I mean when I say this?
Control anything.
I think this is my problem, I guess. It sounds like, I guess my immediate thought is compared to what? So if you're saying I don't have total control, that's obvious, but then it doesn't mean anything. If you're saying I only have some control, then I'm obviously imploring you to use whatever control you do have to this effect.
Okay, now, this
you're
is an
saying you have
argument.
no control, that's
this is
obviously
good.
not true.
That's fine. That statement is an argument that we can actually work with and build off of. Okay. Accusing me of saying I have no control makes me look like an idiot, and then it feels like you're implying that I can have a high degree of control, and I think that makes you look like an idiot. But this statement that like you can exert some control, even though a lot of it is outside of your control. Now we have this is something that we can discuss, okay?
But this is why I'm accusing you of obfuscating.
I am being incredibly clear here. If anybody's obfuscated thus far, you're the one giving the evasive answers. But after all of this talking, now we've gotten to a point that I think is actually an interesting discussion, which is there are people that use words in ways that I disagree with outside of my community. And you agreed that I can't control how words are used in other communities. And you agreed that I can speak up when a word is used incorrectly in my community. But you also agreed that I can't totally redefine a word in my community. So then the question becomes, what is the struggle that you're willing to take, and is the payoff worth it? Because we We both agree that I can exert some influence. I agree with that and you agree with that. We both also agree that a lot of it is out of my control because I can't control other communities and I can't control how words are defined. And I can't totally redefine them in my community, right? So the question is, how much do you want to struggle against that? And that is an interesting conversation. Go ahead.
The reason I'm saying you're obfuscating is that I don't believe that you possibly could have thought I meant anything else last night. You don't think I meant that you have total control, and you don't think that I thought you meant you have zero control.
The problem is that when I would bring up an example, and when I would say, these words are used so far, they have so many different meanings now, I don't want to struggle against all of those other external meanings. I don't want to sit here and have to redefine or try to define Nazi, rapist, homophobe, whatever, in my own stream. You would always say, well, are you saying you have no control over the words? Are you saying that the community is outside of your control? You can't guide them at all?
I knew you weren't saying that.
Okay, well, that's what it felt like to me as an emotional retard creature. That was what I was hearing over and over and over again.
I don't think you're...
Correct. You didn't say I was retarded. You said worse. You assumed that I was being malicious. So it's even worse than being dumb. You assumed that I was being intentionally bad faith by saying gaslighting and evasiveness.
I'm going to settle on semi-intentional.
Okay.
But my sense is now that if you really wanted us to have a shared understanding of what I mean when I say you have control over how your community uses the word Nazi or how they think of the word Nazi, I think that you would offer back a good faith interpretation of that statement. You would say, okay, so you're saying I generally have a lot of influence over how people use the word Nazi in my community. Got it. And I would say, sure. Like, I'd be pretty amenable to that. Like, do you really think I'm going to counter that with saying, no, Stephen. I'm saying you have total 100% control over how
I do think you would try to nail me down that because the issue that I'm having, and this is why I was writing down and trying.
Insane.
You're saying that, but I think it's insane of you. You don't know. I need you to admit this. You don't know if Nick is a Nazi inside of his mind. You can't know that. It's that information is by definition inaccessible to you. You don't know that, right? But when you're trying to nail down on me, like, do you think he would do this? Do you think he's nice? It's like, fuck, man, I don't know. Mate, what about in his ideal world? I don't know what his ideal world would. Maybe you're accusing me of being weaselly every time I refuse to stake out a hard position here. So when you say, like, can you redefine a word? Can you do this? Like, I don't know if you're asking for a one.
That's not why.
I don't. Hold on.
That's not.
I'm just saying that from my perspective, you're trying to nail me down on these ultra rigid positions where it's like, Jesus, I don't even fucking know, like, if he was in power, if he could get the power, what he would do. I'm not sure 100%. So when I'm not taking these 100% positions, it feels like you're attacking me for it. So I don't know what you mean when you're asking me to, like, redefine words or fight for words, or you're giving me examples of how I can, like, change some words or whatever. That's what I'm trying to figure out by writing your responses down and then ask you questions to test it.
Okay. I disagree with your statement that I'm calling you weaselly for not taking a firm stance. That's not why I don't even call you weaselly, but that's not why I'm accusing you of obfuscating.
True. You called me cowardly, spineless, and says I wasn't equipped for the conversation, and that I was gaslighting. I think those are the words you used, but not weaselly. Go ahead.
I think I called all streamers cowardly and spineless.
It was in the context of that conversation related to these topics, so it was very specifically aimed at me. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, are you saying you're mad or hurt that I used those terms, or are you asking me to defend my stance?
No, I'm not mad or hurt. I'm frustrated because once these words are brought out, the argument ends. We can't have a back and forth anymore because now you're telling me what I think and you're not listening to what I'm saying because you've already decided, oh, he's lying about this. He's being bad faith.
But the implication of that is that you never obfuscate, but maybe you do.
The problem is we're having an incredibly complicated conversation about incredibly broad political labels that I believe 90% of people could not accurately identify today. And you're saying, oh, you're not giving a rigid definition of this, you're obfuscating. I'm not obfuscating. I'm just acknowledging the hardcore political realities that we live in today.
That's not why I'm saying you're obfuscating.
Why are you saying I'm obfuscating? Okay, I'm sorry, hold on. I'm writing this down, word for word.
Okay.
Why am I obfuscating?
I think you are straw manning me with a completely untenable position by saying that if I say you have control over how your community defines this word, I must be saying you have 100% control over how your community uses the word.
Okay.
I also
so this is what it, well, hold on. Okay? So you think I'm straw manning you with an untenable position by saying that if you're claiming that I have control over how my community defines a word, you must be saying that I have 100% control over community defines a word. So in my mind, I feel like we're fighting about the interesting conversation, which is a struggle of how much effort should I put into this versus not. So I feel like I'm giving an example where I'm saying, well, there's a lot of external ways that these words are defined as well that are out of my control. And then your response is, no, you can control it in your community. When you say that as a response, so there's two responses. You can either say that, no, you can control it in your community. That makes it sound like a binary position. But if you were to respond to me instead and you were to say, well, yeah, there is a lot of external content there that you can't deal with, but like, I think it's worth it for you to fight against that in your community, even if it's not a 100% thing, to try to like maintain some like level of, and you're gonna have to fight for it all the time, of this word's definition of community. Like a response like that would be like, okay, well, let's talk about how much we should fight for the definition. But that's not what it felt like when I was pushing back for these are why I don't fight 100% on these things. It sounds like you were always giving me a counter. It's like, oh, so you're saying this, or oh, well, you don't think that. Well, no, that made it felt like it was binary from you. That's the feeling.
Okay. Yeah.
Because we both know that I would never say I have no control and I have total control. Both of those things are false. We both know that both of us, I would hope in this conversation, think both of those statements are false, right?
It feels like a derailment when you even introduce either of those concepts, because neither you're not going to say you have zero control, and I'm not going to say you have total control. So, and this is the same thing with whether Nick is a Nazi. It's the same. I feel like it's the same obfuscation. What I'm asking you is, what is your personal assessment? Is he a Nazi? Is he not a Nazi? Or do you not know? But when I press you on that at different times, I get different answers. That feels like the obfuscation. If you just said, I don't know, and I don't care, then no, I'm not going to say you're obfuscating then. I'm not trying to reach into your mind and say that like you're contradicting your inner thoughts. I'm saying the things you are saying are contradicting other things you're saying, and then you're positioning me as being unhappy that you don't know the answer to my question or that you won't take a firm stance. My problem is that you are taking multiple contradictory yet also kind of firm stances and introducing confusion. I think the confusion serves to give you a defense